I sent a PDF to you on this side.
Okay, do we have everybody? Present in the county?
You have Emma back? I don't see her.
Yeah, Emma's back.
Okay.
Is Lauren coming? She's coming virtually.
She said she wasn't going to be able to join till 2, so she had
Right.
some work conflicts.
Where's my gavel?
That's the other thing. I have your gavel and name tags here. I forgot to hand those off to Sandra. Sorry.
Okay. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We are here for the Oregon Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee in Medford, Oregon. We've been trying to get here for several years now to see Aaron's stomping grounds, and we finally made it. So we're stoked about that. And then let's go ahead and just run around the table and introduce ourselves. We're gonna start with Roberto and work ourselves this way. So Roberto.
Yeah, thanks everyone for making it out here today. It's great to finally see folks in person after just seeing little boxes all around my screen. I'm Roberto Cocho. I'm the Active Transportation Program Analyst. I work for ODOT. Been with the team 6 months now, so my anniversary was last week and eventually part of the crew.
But we cannot remember life before you. Remember, do we want to?
Thank you. Yeah.
Liam Ferguson, Oregon, ODOT. I am the Strategic Investment Manager. Thanks for letting me join you today.
Del Scharfenberg, a new OBPAC member. I'm from Milwaukee, Oregon. I'm also on the Clackamas County Bicycle Ped Advisory Committee, and ORTAC, the Oregon Recreational Trust Committee.
Hello, everyone. For those in person, welcome to Southern Oregon. I was born and raised here, born in Ashland, lived up in Phoenix up until I moved to college, where I'm now a 4th year civil engineering student. I'll be graduating this coming spring with a civil engineering degree, and then moving up to Seattle, Washington to start a transportation engineering position. I'm really excited for. And like I said, yeah, thank you all for being here. A little bit background on like how my family got here. So my grandparents immigrated here from Mexico to work in the pear orchards. So that was a really big industry here, as y'all can see, just kind of driving around. That's kind of how my family ended up here. They still live here in their beautiful new home that they rebuilt after the 2020 Almeda fire. So again, welcome, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here today.
Name.
And I am the under 21 chair, and this is my last OBPAC meeting.
Hi, I'm Alan Thompson, he, him, his. I am the ODOT Community Pass Program Manager. And I've been here for 4 years and came from Southern California.
The Newman, OBPAC co-chair, and I want to say thanks to Mavis for facilitating while we're here in person. I use she, her pronouns, and excited that we made it down here just in time for your last committee meeting. Thanks, Erin.
Hey, everyone in person and virtually, Andre Lightsey Walker, I use he, him pronouns, and I am the at-large community rep. But yeah, so super happy to be here. Yeah.
Alrighty, I'm Beth Young. I'm hailing from Newport, and I am the local bike ped / land use or planning representative. She, her.
I'm Mavis Hartz. I am one of your co-chairs. I am the business section of OBPAC, and I came from LeGrand, so it was a really long drive yesterday, but we are here now. Do we have any guests? I'm not seeing anything. Okay. Meeting etiquette. Do we have the fancy little slide that tells everybody that?
Oh, yep. And Mavis, while I pull that up, there are a couple guests online. So if folks want to just chime in and introduce themselves in the chat and share if they want to provide any public comments when we get to that section, that would be great.
What's going on? Okay, we're gonna keep moving because I don't know what's going on. So meeting etiquette, if you're here in person, please turn off your cell phones. If you are in here virtually, we prefer that you stay muted and turn off your cameras until you're given leave to speak. And then, of course, we are always trying to have polite, understanding conversations around this table. And so please respect that. So our meeting goals for today are, we're going to be voting on the Oregon Community Pass grants. Very excited to get that money out the door to a whole bunch of communities. We'll be working on our work plan for the next year coming through. We will be getting an update for Great Streets and a couple other fantastic things. So moving on to public comments. Do we have anything else in our agenda?
Herself in the chat. Susan introduced herself in the chat.
Do we have any things to add to our agenda?
A couple folks introducing themselves in the chat, but nobody saying that they would like to provide public comments. There is one public comment received prior to the meeting that staff responded to that's in your folder in the drive.
Is it something that we need to respond to as well?
It was a pretty general comment about an experience with a person riding a bike on a sidewalk. So staff provided some resources on what OBPAC has been advising ODOT on related to, facility designs that make people feel safer in the bike lane, where they can call for maintenance issues, since that sometimes is why people are riding on the sidewalk rather than the bike lane, as well as educational resources that we have available.
Fantastic. ODOT members, would you like to introduce yourself, Susan, and all those others? Robin?
I'm Jessica Horning. I'm ODOT's Pedestrian and Bicycle Program Manager and the staffer for OBPAC that sadly cannot be there with you all in person due to some illness that I don't want to share with you all. So thanks for your flexibility with the virtual hybrid meeting logistics.
I'm Susan Pikeman. I'm the Policy and Implementation Manager in the Public Transportation Division. And I'll fill in for Karen Criswell on the division updates. And by the way, from my standpoint, I can see everyone and it works out really well from my perspective in the virtual room. So kudos to the hybrid setup.
Good job, Rebecca. Do we have anybody else just waiting to introduce themselves? Saw a couple in the chat. Okay, moving on. So approval of the minutes for our March and April. So let's go ahead with March 1st.
I have one brief amendment. So I provided an update about meeting with ODOT executives in agenda item 3 in the March minutes, and that was back in December of 2022. So I just wanted to specify that because the minutes as written could have implied that we've been meeting more frequently, but here we are 6 months later with no update. So I wanted to specify that was the December 2022 meeting that I was referencing in the March minutes.
Thank you. Any other corrections for the March minutes? All right. I would love a motion. I move the March and the April minutes. Oh, wait, we're just doing March. Just March, okay.
I'll second.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, let's talk about April.
And I'm ambitious. April.
Well, does anybody have any changes they need to do to the April minutes? Fantastic. I would definitely love to hear your movement.
I still move the acknowledgements for approval.
Fantastic.
I'll second it this time.
All right, this is fun. I feel the excitement. All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Both motions pass. Fantastic. Okay. Ms. Pikeman.
That was fast. Am I up already?
You're it. Peg, you're it.
Let me finish chewing. No.
So can you stand her so we can see her a little bit larger, please? Yes.
We're gonna make you big so we can see you chew.
Oh, I don't know how big your screen is, so it's a little, might be half your wall or
It's like
something. So
you're in person.
I know. Well, I wanted to apologize actually that I'm not there in person. I intended to come down, but one of the first pieces on the agenda is staff changes. We have a couple of staff changes for our division. I wanted to let you guys know in terms of potentially impacting OBPAC, but we're hoping the transition is actually as smooth as possible. So our wonderful Jessica Horning is actually going to transition for a year, just a year, 12 months, just sign the paperwork for a rotation with our delivery and operations branch, leading the work that Karen Criswell had communicated around the rapid implementation, like the pedestrian safety rapid implementation. I think the final name is to be determined. So Jessica has a lot of skills that I have always appreciated, but one of the skill sets that she does have is experience standing up new funding programs, and with her most recent experience with the Pedestrian Bicycle Strategic Program. And so she's going to be helping our delivery and operations branch set up that program for their ultimate ownership instead of having it live over in the public transportation division. So Jessica will be taking a little bit of her portfolio, some of her construction programs with her over to delivery and operations and setting up that new program, helping them set up the new program. And we will be we're asking for, we're doing a rotation, essentially a backfill rotation for Jessica's position. It's going to be open to all state employees and get posted as soon as we can get it posted out in order to have her replacement in. So in the interim, we'll figure out kind of the July OBPAC meeting, but that interim person, that's a development rotation opportunity, will be staffing OBPAC. I'm really grateful for some of the consistency with both Roberto and Leanne. And so that's a pretty big deal. Great opportunity for the agency to spread Jessica's skill set around, and a good opportunity for someone to kind of dive deeper into the pedestrian and bicycle programmatic world and programs and policies that Jessica manages in a lot of the interagency coordination. Jessica, do you have anything to add on your rotation announcement?
No, I think you covered it. I apologize. I meant to reach out to folks one-on-one before the meeting, and some other things kind of got in the way. So sorry to be like telling the group at the meeting, and especially when I'm not there in person. But I think it's going to be a really great opportunity for me personally and for the agency in terms of skill development and really expanding the active transportation expertise we have in the agency. So it'll be a good thing. And I will probably still be at OBPAC meetings, just more of a resource player and presenter rather than your go-to for staffing things.
And thankfully, Jessica's new or interim manager has agreed to is supportive of Jessica providing some mentorship and support for whomever is backfilling her role. And again, it's just moving around the agency and kind of spreading the pedestrian and bicycle expertise out in order to develop in other parts of the agency. But if you guys would give me, would be so kind as to give me a virtual cheers appreciation to Jessica and all of the time and heart that she has put into OBPAC. Again, it is a 12-month rotation. And so, so from that standpoint, she's gone, but not gone forever, just on for roughly 6 OBPAC meetings. She will not be the staff coordinator.
That's it.
So
So just
roughly
we're
6
wa-
meetings.
we're watching in time.
Yeah, we got you.
As part of that surprise and appreciation, one of our great ODOT staff members baked you a surprise cake, Jessica, which is here, that we will bring out at the 3:10 break. Boardman delivered it yesterday, so we will have a moment to celebrate you, and it will be a farewell for now cake. For all of the folks who this is their last meeting, farewell for now, farewell for now. Oh, actually, we'll bring it in now. This is the cake. So maybe we'll dig into it at the first break. Thank you.
That's a legit cake. Good looking cake.
It's Jennifer Boardman, legit
Nice.
homemade with love cake. Can Al see it?
Can you hold it up? I can't actually, I saw it come in.
Put it in front of Andre.
Wow, I so wish
Nice.
I could eat cake or anything right now.
Instead of this, I don't know if I can focus with that in my face.
I know.
We'll probably get to the first break early because we're kind of chugging through the agenda, but anyway, we want appreciation.
Thanks,
So
everybody.
this move kind of streamlined the funding to the bike ped side of things. Is that part of why we're doing it?
Oh, in terms of delivering operations owning this construction program versus, so it's a little bit, in the agency structure, it's a little bit of an anomaly that Jessica manages 2 construction programs that are not grants that are going out to local agencies, but construction programs on the ODOT construction programs for the ODOT system. And so most of those live over in our delivery and operations branch with other programs such as pavement, culverts, things like that. And so Jessica does a fair amount of time coordinating with delivery and operations right now. And so it is an effort to, but you know, our group, Public Transportation Division, has a lot of expertise in standing up programs. And so that's how we end up like standing up programs over here a lot, but they need to own the program. So Jessica going in and helping support, that's really a huge success in my opinion.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the goal is for me to work with them to create the structure, get it off the ground and walking on its own little program toddler legs, and then hand it off to its new long-term program manager in the traffic safety section of delivering operations for the long term. But the nice thing about doing that rotation is also kind of learning, like, just strengthening those relationships with delivering operation, like we need to be able to do this rapid delivery model that we're looking for, but then also being able to like bring those relationships and rapid delivery tool sets back to the other active transportation programs that we manage. So hopefully everything we do can benefit.
Awesome.
But Susan, I think you had other updates too.
Yeah, I've got a couple more. Another one on a kind of a big staffing change. I myself am actually, today is actually my last day in this position. I am moving I'm not leaving ODOT as an agency. I'm moving over as the policy lead for the climate office. I have it was a big decision on my part from the standpoint that I love all of the work that the Public Transportation Division does and the programmatic work and the support for, all of the programs and the policies and the funding to support a reduction in vehicle miles traveled. I had to make some personal decisions for my health and my family in terms of what is the right kind of position for me within the agency. And so I've decided to take a step back and move over back into the more explicit policy realm opposed to supervisory management. And so this is my last day, and it's really fitting for me that my last day includes attendance this afternoon at OBPAC. OBPAC is a committee that has held very special place in my heart. I don't know if all of you guys know, but I was a member of OBPAC in past years, including being their vice chair. I've filled in as staffing for OBPAC when we've had staffing holes and things like that. And it's a committee that I truly cherish. And so I just wanted to say a little note of appreciation for all of the commitment that each of you and heart that each of you bring to this committee. And it's really important to me. And I'm sure that I'll interact with you again in some ways, just not as closely as I have currently. So Marsha Hoskins, the previous manager for, I took over for Marsha Hoskins at her retirement. She's graciously agreed to come out of retirement for a couple of months as an interim manager for the two groups that I manage, and will be helping with the hiring for my replacement. So you shouldn't experience too many staff hiccups. You just won't see me around as much, but know that I am, may not be in attendance at all the OBPAC meetings, but I'm working on, diligently working and passionately working on policy to help support better outcomes in the climate arena, including any implementation around the Oregon Transportation Plan that helps reduce vehicle miles traveled. Again, that's what I love. So excited to get back into the policy realm of things. So, all right, and I got
Nothing. You'll be missed. Keep going.
thanks, Mavis. All right, and then just some general, no other staffing changes in that respect to report. Let's see, in terms of key funding programs, something that's kind of a not great news, but something that is taking up a lot of time from our division standpoint. We're working, the Sunset Empire Transit District had up in the Astoria region had shut down service for due to lack of funds. And we manage the statewide transportation improvement funds, that's the employee payroll tax funds, and do what we can as a division to support transit agencies and their success. And so there's been a lot of time from a number of our staff within our division helping, working with the governor's office, helping the Sunset Empire Transit District staff, working on getting some loans and things like that to restore service. And so that's just something that the reason why I bring this up is because it kind of indicates kind of the depth and breadth of the public transportation division, in addition to our policy and programmatic work, but the efforts that we also do to directly support transit agencies keeping the buses rolling and things. And so it's also an indicator of kind of the state of it. We're not saying it's specifically it's an indicator of the state of transit. It's more of an understanding on our end of just making sure that the funds that we manage through our division are, are applied in a way and that people aren't in any sort of financial situation. And so we're just kind of really trying to understand the issues that have arisen with Sunset Empire to make sure that it's not an indicator of other issues across the state. So that's just something that we're doing that is important for our division that I just wanted to let you guys know because it's been in the news quite a bit. Let's see. Other key programs, Robin is on for Great Streets in Oregon. Alan is on around Oregon Community Paths. Let's see. In terms, I think that's about the most substantive kind of updates I was going to provide. Leanne, I had asked if you would feel comfortable giving a legislative update. Do you feel comfortable doing that after you did it with the Safe Roads School Advisory Committee, or am I putting you on the spot awkwardly in a meeting? And if so, I can.
No, I have it pulled up because I thought I don't have any updates from last Thursday until now, but I don't know if you do either. So anyway, imagine it's last Thursday. This is an update from that day. So the general overview is that we're rounding the corner to the final month of the legislative session. We have a good idea at this point, or our ODPAC legislative team has a good idea at this point, which bills will pass and which bills are dead. 5/19, so last Friday was a deadline to hold a work session. So a lot of bills died last Friday that if they hadn't had a work session yet. That's kind of the high level on that end. So we're a lot of things died last Friday. The bills that this group is probably the most interested in has to do is House Bill 2099, which is the Joint Transportation Committee reviewed this bill, I believe that last week, and it's what we're calling the Transportation Omnibus Bill. It's the House Bill 2017 update that we've sort of been talking about for a while, or our legislative team has been talking about. So this bill provides various fixes, but notably makes important changes to the Safe Routes to School program, including the increasing of eligibility radius from 1 mile to 2 miles, as well as increasing the focus group from K through 8 to K through 12. These are both great updates from the Safe Routes to School perspective and are aligning with federal statute. The other thing is that we will, there's language in there that will allow greater flexibility in determining the grant match requirement for individual projects. Right now, the match requirement is 40%, but can be reduced to 20% in certain instances, and this would allow some flexibility in that to potentially reduce the match lower in certain instances. That's all. So that's House Bill 2099, and you'll see a lot of amendments if you start to look at that bill. And I think the Safe Routes to School language starts in like Amendment 3 is when they started putting all that language in there. There's also House Bill 3113A. This would approve 10 million of general funds to the Great Streets program. This bill was voted out of the Joint Transportation Committee on May 9th and is currently in Ways and Means where it awaits further actions. And then there is the House Bill 2793, which creates the Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee within ODOT. Have y'all heard about this one at all? This one was new to me when I read it in this update. So I'll read every word that they send to me. This is from our legislative team. The measure requires the advisory committee to review jurisdictional transfer applications and then submit a report to the Joint Transportation Committee containing a recommendation to fund 3 jurisdictional transfers before each long legislative session. The measure also directs ODOT to adopt rules specifying the application process for jurisdictional transfer and to provide assistance and a meeting spot for the advisory committee. The bill was voted out of the Joint Transportation Committee on May 11th and is currently in Joint Ways and Means where it awaits further action. So that's the general update I have. Happy to take questions if I don't know the answer, which is likely. I'd be happy to write them down and contact our legislative team to be able to get back to you. Everyone familiar with jurisdictional transfers? Making sure those words are normal. No. So jurisdictional transfer means a highway that used to a road like in Portland that used to be a highway is a highway, but now it's enveloped by the city, works more as a city street than a highway. ODOT probably, the idea is that ODOT doesn't, the management of ODOT is not great for those now city streets, and we want to transfer them to the city. So jurisdictional transfer from ODOT to the city. Where it gets stuck is that usually they need a lot of improvements, and so the city doesn't want to take it until it's up to their code. So it's a pretty big price tag. So a lot of these have stalled. So creating this committee is probably a good idea to discuss and select a couple before each legislative session, because it probably would need to be a legislative decision to fund it in order for it to be fully funded. And sometimes it's shortened to JT, which I think is hilarious because it's not Justin Timberlake. It is jurisdictional transfer. In the transportation realm, JT means jurisdictional transfer.
Yeah, I was curious, so there's a 50-30-20 split, which means state, county, and cities, I forget, city, county. And I'm curious with the jurisdictional transfer, as more and more state facilities transfer to local jurisdictions, if there's any mention in the legislation about revisiting that split, because if more liability is passed on to the locals, then you would think that more of the revenue split over time should also go to the locals who have to maintain it. I think in general, this transition is good for bike ped because it's likely to get more robust walking and biking facilities. They're really integrated into the local community. But to against point, like these facilities are expensive. So is the money also coming with it beyond the upfront capital to bring it up initially, but the ongoing maintenance funds. You probably don't know the answer,
But we can,
curious.
yeah. Great. I like the way, I love your curiosity. I'll ask the appropriate people and see if I can find the answer for you.
And one thing to note is that jurisdictional transfers do also work the other way as well. So probably the one that folks are most familiar with is recently 82nd Avenue in Portland was transferred from ODOT to City of Portland. But we also, like in House Bill 2017, that legislative session, there was jurisdictional transfer of Cornelius Pass Road in Washington County from the county to ODOT. So there are some places where places are urbanizing, and what was kind of a country road is now serving more as a regional connector. So that committee would work on transfers going both directions.
And then with safe routes, so our letter touched on the 3 points that you spoke to, but then there was also legislation about making the people transportation funds eligible for crossing guards and other active transportation supporting trips and program needs. Is there
Yeah.
any update on where that's at?
I don't have an update on the pupil transportation funds, but I can see if we can get an update on that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a quick question about HB 2571, which is the e-bike subsidy. And I sort of lost track of it in my transition, so. Was curious if you had any information.
Not in this update. Is any, Jessica or Susan, do either of you have 2571?
Yeah,
Any updates on 2571?
I do not have any updates on that one right now. It hasn't been on ODOT's real close tracking list because all of the work and like budgetary implications on that one are on DEQ. But I will reach out to some folks in the chat and see what I can get.
Thank you.
It's probably the same answer actually for the pupil transportation bill, because that mostly affects the Oregon Department of Education. It's probably why they didn't update us on it, but we can see what we can. We'll see if we can find a quick update for those two bills. Great questions. Any other question that I probably won't be able to answer, but. If this 2571 were to be put into to come to pass, and the e-bikes, more people would be purchasing those e-bikes and using them, are we going to focus more energy on infrastructure for those vehicles? That's just my question. It's a good question.
It's like a question to the ether. It's yes, yes, Mavis, we should be, but I don't think there's going to be anything that's explicitly connected as such. I did want to highlight the fact that the Oregon Transportation Commission will be at the May meeting, the first kind of introductory discussion around the 27 to 30 STIP, the funds that they have discretion over, and like the flexible funds and things like that. We're started along with a budget update on kind of where the agency is around some of the challenges with inflationary pressure and the decreasing buying power essentially of the state highway fund. And it is also, you know, some of those discussions and presentations have been happening at the legislature as well, looking at what are the needs around transportation funding going into the 2025 session. So some of those conversations, I'm kind of actually, I'm bringing two things together. One thing is that the Oregon Transportation Commission over the next several months will be having a discussion on what are the priorities for the flexible funds for the 27 to 30 STIP, similar to how we had them for 24 to 27 and for IIJA. And I'm going to spell out three acronyms there, two acronyms. STIP is Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. It's our essentially our big list of projects and programs. And then IIJA is the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And so the Oregon Transportation Commission has the authority to, or the agency has the authority actually, the Oregon Transportation Commission has helped identify where some of the flexible funding or where some of the discretionary funding from our federal funds has been able to go. They've also been receiving and so in the there'll be a discussion at the July meeting on kind of this needs of the system comprehensively, and they'll be gaveling down on the decision, I think, in November around how they want to spend where they want to allocate the discretionary flexible funds that they have. So I just wanted to note that it's not legislative specifically, but it's an important conversation to have. And I believe Travis Brower from our director's office, our assistant director can't remember all Travis's title. He'll be at OBPAC in the near future, kind of giving that budget presentation, talking about the 27 to 30 discretionary decision at the OTC. But that information is also on the needs of the system, the challenges around the state highway fund and things like that are also conversations happening at the Capitol right now. And so there's likely to be continued discussion on those needs going into the next long session, which is 2025, where there may be it's been whatever, 7 years, something like that, since House Bill 2017, which was our last transportation package. So in terms of the cadence of transportation packages, 2025 looks to be like the potential location for the next, or potential timing for the next package. It's got a lot of words in there. So basically, legislators talking about the legislature is talking about funding. And the OTC is also talking about funding right now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have anything else? You got 4 more minutes.
I did just hear back from our government affairs rep for both House Bill 2571 and 3014, the student pupil transportation bills. They believe that both of those are sitting with the Joint Ways and Means Committee. But they're not sure of what next steps.
Three more minutes. Anything else? Perfect. Okay. Thank you very, very much. And yes, we will be sad that we don't get to see your intellect carrying in the future.
I'm around though. I'm not far.
Good. Good.
Susan, please connect us with climate efforts, because we've had that on our work plan for a while, and I think you have a better sense of where there could be a nexus with OBPAC's work and where maybe it doesn't align quite so much. So if you can loop back to us in a few months or half a year and let us know what opportunities you see, that would be great. And for Jessica, there are 7 hearts on this cake. So I'm going to give 1 to Erin, and there's 6 counting the meetings you'll miss. And then we expect you back here a year from now.
As long as the cake isn't still sitting there just with the hearts missing.
Oh, it'll go away. All right, we're going to move on to our community grant recommendation. We actually get to try and give some money away today. So Alan, if you will take it away, please.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Alan Thompson. I'm the Community Pass Program Manager. I have a tendency to talk very fast, and if I start sounding like a little, then please let me know and I'll slow down. So next slide, please. I know we have to go to view control L. So we'll be focusing on, I was saying scenarios at the last meeting, now we're calling it focus areas. So there are 2 different types of projects that we fund. We have the state funding and then the federal funding. The state funding, it can only be used for construction, and the federal funding has both planning and construction. So there's going to be one recommendation for the state funded program, which is construction. And then we have a choice about how to apply the additional carryover federal funding for either planning focus or a construction focus. Next slide, please. So we had 52 applications received, total, we have it by the 5 regions, and I mentioned last month is, we really need, we as in me. Really need to make sure that we reach out to regions 3, 4, and 5 to make sure that they are getting a more applications, that they are aware of this program and are able to compete along with the more urban areas of region 1 and region 2. Next slide, please. So here's an example. This has been updated from the last one. Is notice I have yellow in there now. And at the last meeting, you had mentioned, can we focus on we have the green area, which is fully funded, and then the yellow one is the next one on the list. And can we try to focus on that prior to going into secondary funding? Because one of the things we had mentioned is if we have 6 projects funded, we may not have enough for 7, 8, and 9, or 7. So what we do then is we look at the next available one that can fit the funding. So if we have a $5 million project, that is project 7, and we have $1 million available, where can we put it? And it might be that project 10 is the very next one that money can then go to, or it might be project 12, or it may even go down to like project 16. And so the idea is, do we focus on the very next one in priority order and try to find funding for that? Or do we want to just immediately start, immediately try to fund whatever we can with the available funding? So that was the idea. And so the thought was at the last meeting was, let's see what we can do with the yellow areas with the next one in the priority before we decide to just fund everything. Next slide, please. And here's how the contingency works. And this one, the last one is we added in the yellow one. So if we have enough money before the cutoff date, we will apply it to the very next one. If it's small enough to where we can work with the applicant and say, can you reduce your funding to be able to fit the available funds? We will do that. And then come March 31st, if not, then we will spend however we can to make full use of the funds. And the March 31st cutoff date is because starting in the very next month in April, we start preparing for the next solicitation. So that's when we start having webinars, and we need to know the money that's going to be available for both state and federal. And that helps the applicants then prepare for how much money they think that they can get. Next slide, please. So this is the state funded construction. So this is the first thing that we're asking. We received 9 applications. And so this one hopefully is very easy for you. We are funding 7 of them. And the very first one next on the list is the city of Pendleton. So if anything drops out that's over $404,000 or close to $404,000, then we will fund the city of Pendleton. And this is by March 31st. However, let's say that we have Portland Bureau of Transportation, which is number 2, drops out, and we get $387,000, and city of Pendleton cannot do that. Then we would go ahead and fund the city of Cottage Grove, because then that's under that amount. So that's how we're being able to fund these contingencies. So next slide, please. So here's the item we want. Will you recommend that the Oregon Transportation Commission approve the state construction list as presented? And if we back it up one, then we can see it again for them to look at. Is there any discussion on this, or do you want to go straight to a vote? Any questions?
What was the largest amount that they could get?
We cut it off for state construction at 1 million. So we had $200,000 to $1 million for state, and for federal, it was $500,000 to $6 million. And the purpose for that is, one, since we were increasing the total amount for federal to 6 million, we couldn't really do that with the state because there was only 4 million. 2, 30% match. Once you start getting over $1 million, is an awful lot of money, particularly for smaller communities. So what we did is we turned the state funded construction into like a small grant program, less than $1 million, so more smaller communities can be able to fund it. And then the federal one then tends to benefit more urban, more expensive projects, because then you start seeing a lot of bridges and whatnot in there. So that was the idea behind it. We still have some organizations that are federally certified that are still using state funds or are applying for state funds. And we don't have a method to say, well, if you're certified, you can only apply for federal funds. So if they go for less than the amount that that is how they compete. I know that most certified agencies would rather have state funds. It gives them more flexibility and where there's less requirements that they have to meet. So that's the other reason why we're getting it much smaller, because normally their projects are much more expensive. So these are all the things that have been going through as we've been trying to figure out how best to handle that. And in the future, if we can figure out a way to make it easier for smaller communities to really focus on state funding, then we will do that. But as it is, this is where we are right now with this focus.
Yeah, because if you're shooting for small communities, there's not very many out there.
True.
Those are pretty big communities.
And I have a follow-up question. So having worked for a small community that was not federally certified, I can really relate to the barriers that they can face. So I'm curious what you're seeing across the program with smaller cities and counties that are not federally certified. Are they finding it easy to partner with those that are to deliver, or is the federal certification requirement posing a barrier to building multi-use paths in these smaller cities that aren't federally certified to directly deliver federal projects?
The biggest issue I saw with this solicitation was COVID and the recession. And smaller communities were saying that they did not have the manpower because people have left. And they didn't want to take on any additional construction because of their staffing issues, because they just weren't sure that they could successfully implement at this time. That was the biggest issue that we saw with this. I didn't look at the partnerships. We only had one, I think, in this solicitation where they would actually be partnering with another agency, with a certified agency. The rest would have been ODOT managing it.
Is ODOT willing to manage all projects that are requested from jurisdictions that aren't certified, or what's that?
Yes.
process?
Mhm.
Okay, oh, good. That's great. Thank you.
Alan's worked really hard on that part of the program, because
Right.
that's probably the main complication, or one of
It-
them.
yes.
Yeah.
And we even had a case with the I'm trying to remember the Warm Springs Indian Reservation, where they did not want ODOT to manage it for them, but it was a federal grant, but they're not certified, so it turned into a catch-22. And we were able to work with them and the region and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and we're able to get the funds transferred from FHWA to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which then transferred it to the Tribal Transportation Fund, so that they could actually still get it implemented. So
Nice work on that one too. It took about 3 years, actually.
it took a couple of years to be able to get that done. All right, next slide. Oh, wait. So wait, sorry about that.
We have more questions about this list right here before we move on.
And Jessica, are there any questions virtually, since we can't really see if folks have hands up or posing questions?
Yeah, not seeing any in the chat.
Thank you.
I think we do a motion on this and then proceed into the federal discussion. This is kind of separate.
Agree. I need a motion. Does anybody like this list enough to make a motion on it?
I make a motion to recommend that OTC approve the state construction list as presented.
I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This is your list. Hopefully we get down to the yellow.
Millions of dollars.
All right, let's go. So here's what we had with the federally funded projects. We advertised that we had $33 million. And this got complicated in and of itself because it was originally $30 million in federal funding. $18 million in federal funding, I'm sorry. And then we received $25 million in JTIA funding, Joint Transportation Infrastructure account, spread out over this cycle and the next cycle. So that brought it up to $30 million. And then Leanne graciously gave us $3 million for our Safe Routes to School funds.
From the Infrastructure and Jobs Act.
Yes. So that brought it up to $33 million, and we didn't have any state funding. So 2 weeks before the cycle, then we got $4 million in TOF funds, transportation operating funds for the state. So that was why there were only 9 applications, is because we didn't discuss it, we didn't talk about it, we had to send out emails to everyone as quickly as possible 2 weeks before the solicitation started, saying, hey, we got more funding. So, but now we have additional carryover funds, so the question is where do we spend it? Where do we want to focus on that? So I'll go through just what we have in priority order of slides. Go ahead, next slide, please. So here's an example of just federally funded project refinements, and this is in priority order. And we'll have the same thing for the federal. And this is not the complete list because that's on a separate attachment, because there was 25 applications, if I recall correctly, for project refinement, and I can't fit them all onto just one slide. But so we have 9 projects that we can fund and with the available funds. And then we have the yellow one, which would be the very next one on the list, if there's funding that's available. And then we start getting into the secondary priority list. And as the same one with the federal, and if one doesn't match up, then we go to the next. So go ahead and show the federal one. Next slide, please. So these are the construction ones we had. The problem we have is that number 9, Hood River Valley, $27.5 million. We have $30 million in the federal construction. So that's a little over $2.5 million left over. So where do we apply those funds? And there's not enough funding for Veneta Elmira. There's enough money for Klamath County. Or if we get more funds for it, then we can fund a few more. So there's this whole give and take that we have to look at. So next slide, please. So one of the ideas is let's look at the planning focus. So we have $9 million for 9 projects for construction, totaling $27.5 million and $2.3 million in contingency projects. And then that $1.9 million goes over to project refinement, which will fund 13 projects. Totaling 4.9, almost $5 million. Next slide. So this again looks at the project refinement, and this is with $4.9 million. We can fund 13 planning projects. So this comes out fairly easy. We're about $70,000 over, but that's an easy one to take slightly out of construction. And then the next one is the city of Sutherland for the West Side Multi-Use Path project. And the city of Tigard has a rail undercrossing that they're looking at if we can't get that money for Sutherland. And then the next one shows construction. Go ahead, the next one.
Wait, I have
Okay.
a question.
Yes.
So City of Sutherland and Tigard, they scored the same. Why is City of Sutherland above?
That's a great question. And what we did is when we scored these, if anything's a tie score, and well, we applied it to all of them, is that we took the scoring matrix that you gave us and that applied a score. And then what we did to ensure that if there were any ties, that it would go to the highest needing project, we took the raw transportation disadvantage index score, which is 0 to 2.3. And then we did an additional sort. So we're sorting by the primary score, then followed by a secondary score by the raw TDI score. So the city of Sutherland had a slightly higher disadvantage transportation index than the city of Tigard. And so that's how we broke the tie.
All right, thank you.
So next slide, please. And now we have construction and we have the same problem that I mentioned earlier. But if you look, you can see the asterisk. So if we can't fund Lane County come March 31st, we can fund number 11, Klamath County, And we can fund number 14, the city of Cottage Grove. And so that would be what we would normally do, is we would just go to what we can afford with available funds, so that we can spend as much of the money as possible. So the idea is that we will negotiate with Lane County if they can reduce, or maybe they can, because we're only gonna have about $2.5 million, and theirs is 5.2. And if they can't, if they can downscope to 2.5, which would be highly unlikely, then we will fund number 11 and 14. But we'll have until March of next year to work that out and decide it, and then go forward. Because someone may drop out, and then there might be additional funding. So we're gonna take that time to work with Lane County. All right, so next slide, please. So now it's the exact same thing, except now we're gonna give $1.9 million to federal. So again, we have the 9 projects for construction, 27 million, but now there's 4.28, almost $4.3 million available. And then the project refinement drops down from 13 projects in the other scenario down to 9. So next slide, please. So this is the same issue we had before, where we have $3,189,000, where, or excuse me, the first 9 projects, City of Happy Valley is the last, and if one drops out, then we can fund Jefferson County. So that's same with the traditional priority. And then next slide, please.
Wait, can we go back that way?
Sure.
Once again, we have Benton County has 2. So what is the total if they were to have applied together? How much could they have gotten?
One's Benton County, where is the other Benton County? Okay, yeah, one's Benton County Public Works and one's Benton County, so. There were 2 different departments, we just treated them separately, so we didn't think of them applying together.
What would be the top grant funds that you could receive for this?
Oh, for statewide construction, it'd be 1 million. So if they, so you're saying if they applied together, we combine them and get it under?
So it's, if they had run it as one, it would have not have, it would have been too high of a price tag, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, one of the criteria that we had in our guidelines is we don't want to fund 2 separate projects under just one application.
Nice.
Because then it can either dilute it by making a good. And here's an example, and then this is when I worked in Southern California, is we would receive safe routes to school grants, and this city would apply for 2 projects. One was a very high ranking project, and the other one was not something we would normally fund, but since they combined them in one grant, they wanted, is their way of being able to fund something that they would normally wouldn't get funding. And so we don't want them to, we put in our guidelines to make sure that that they don't do that. So that was the reason why another reason why they may have 2 separate applications. So that's my logic behind that. Did I answer your question?
No,
Okay, well,
mine wasn't really a question. It was just merely a Benton County is getting 2.
okay.
And the quick math on that one, the total for those 2 requests is 1,090,219.
So it's pretty close.
Mhm.
But you're saying that they're different enough and different. And they're separated. It's not the same person just applying twice.
Correct.
As long as that's not what's happening.
But even if it were, if they're 2 separate path projects that are needed. Then
There's
I
a
don't
lot
have
of
to-
people that need.
Yes.
And I hate to give a whole lot to just one area. It's just me.
And for something that we can bring up for the next cycle, not necessarily this meeting, is that should we limit one application per jurisdiction?
It is a lens that we have used. I know that we used it with the Safe Routes to School at one point, and it was a last minute, like, okay, we need to make sure that things are going.
We don't have to answer this now. It's just something.
Yeah, it's one of those like, I love that they have two projects and they're probably both gonna be fabulous. And it sounds like there's two different groups applying, so it's not the same person, not the same group of people doing both projects. So they are truly two separate entities. So even though it's Benton County, it's two separate entities. So
Correct.
that is. I just don't want somebody being like, I'm gonna apply for both of them, they're gonna meet in the middle and. I would find that abysmal.
Yes. Okay,
Please continue.
all right, thank you. No worries. Next slide, please. So then this next one is.
Real quick, Alan, there
Yes.
is one question in the chat of asking if there was any weighting of applications based on the region they've applied from.
No, we did not do geographical equity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the construction, and so since this is the one where we're looking at funding all of the construction, the extra 1.9, then we can fund an additional project. We end up, Lane County is more likely now to be able to downscope because we have 4.2 million, so they can, if they can downscope enough to be able to get it to a little over 4.5 million or 4.2 million, then we should be able to fund them. If not, we mentioned before that Klamath County and City of Cottage Grove would be the next ones, but we can also add the City of North Bend with their Pony Creek Greenway connector. But notice that that's number 18 on the list, because that's just how the funding just drops down, because there's only X amount of dollars and we can't fund the City of Dallas, and there's a few other 16 to 17 are also over $1 million. So we'd end up going all the way down to the City of North Bend. So the idea is hopefully that Lane County will be the one. And there's gonna be dogs barking in my phone because someone's at my phone. So I'm very hopeful that in this situation, we would be able to fund Lane County, and if not, then we would work on funding the next available ones that we can within to fully expend the amount of funds. So next slide, please.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question? I think it's just about the downscoping methodology and just like. Does everyone get the opportunity on the list to, do we ask everyone like, hey, is this within a range you can downscope to, or what's sort of the?
We do it in, we
Practice.
would do it in this situation, just say, can you do it in order to be able to get the funding? The normal practice that we did in cycle one was usually after the grant was awarded, because it was a brand new program. And so if they if they had bid $1 million and we found out that it was like $1.4 million, then they had options. One is they could downscope it to be able to fit the amount of budget, because these are competitive grants. We can't just give additional funds. You have to apply for funds. So the idea is, one is that they could withdraw completely and then the money would go to the next on the list. Two, they could downscope, provided that it would not change their scoring because of the priority scoring. And then the third one, and we did this only with federal grants, is if the project, was doing really well, could we convert it from a construction grant to a project or refinement grant? Now, if it's $1 million, then they could only get 750,000 because that's the maximum. So that 250,000 could then be applied for additional construction. And so we had one that was downscoped, we had one that was canceled, and one that was converted to project refinement.
Got it. Okay, so curious about in that order, if somebody drops out, would that money go to a downscope one to make it full?
It would.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so that's the
Okay.
idea, yes. So if I get what you're saying, so let's say that it comes out to where there's enough after Clemson County, but almost enough for City of Eugene there, that we should then look with City of Eugene if we can. So that would be good, except that we're gonna be waiting until March. And so it's all about the times. I can work with the Lane County possibly over the course of the next year to be able to see what we can come up with. And then if additional funds come in, great. But come March, we have to make a decision. So that's the problem.
It's gotta be allocated.
Yeah, it's gotta be
Okay.
allocated.
Question, whenever a jurisdiction drops out for some reason, can they just reapply for the next year without doing any paperwork that can?
They still have to file an application because the application gets finessed and changed. And so.
Okay, so they need to finesse it,
Mhm.
but they can, then they, just like anybody else, they can apply. Did they get any sort of special preference or?
No, but they don't get penalized for not being able to afford it either. And one of the things that what we've done is, we've been, we hired a consultant to do a lot of scoping. So we've got a good idea that a lot of these projects might be downscoped a little bit because of inflation and whatnot. So there's going to be a lot of discussions between the time that the OTC approves and the time that the IGA is in the, so what we do is we just, right now, we're not punishing them for overbidding because a lot of communities just don't know. And it costs a lot of money to hire an engineer to do the technical scoping of a project that you may or may not get. So, so they're not going to be perfect. So we've tried to do some of that for them. And so we're going to give them our information and help them to decide what works best for them.
Okay. I want to just kind of comment that these small cities jurisdictions, even like Lincoln County is only 40,000 people. It's less than the city of Corvallis. It's very hard to make this kind of a grant application. And there's, like you say, staffing problems on the application end of it, not to mention the engineering end of it. So I would just, my comment is, let's make it easy for them. If they may have been high at the last year, maybe they could reapply with just minor changes. Or do you assist them at all in doing that if they didn't make the list, or even if they made the list and they dropped out?
Yes, what we do is when we break it down into two different processes, and this is similar to Safe Route School. So we have our pre-application process and then our application process. And in the pre-application process, the first thing we look at is, are they eligible?
Right.
And so if there's any issues at all with eligibility, we let them know that, you're not eligible unless you do A, B, and C. And then we give them the opportunity to do A, B, and C. So even if they have issues with their pre-application, we can work with them to finesse it to where then they can improve their application based upon our feedback on the pre-app.
So that's helping ones that haven't been through this process already, but I'm talking about the ones that have made it through very nicely. But almost for one reason or another, it didn't happen. So can they, I guess they can avoid, they don't have to go through the pre-application process. They know how to do it. So they're saving money there, or time, staff time there. Are you doing it in any other way to assist ones that are pretty much good, except for one reason or another, the money didn't come through last time?
Oh, the other thing we do is when we send out our letter telling them that they were not awarded, is we give them a debrief. We offer them a debrief. And so we go through and say, this is where if you're going to reapply, this is where you need to improve your application.
Okay, but the ones that were good and they
Right.
denied it, they're not any small ones here, like we were mentioning before, but
Let's go with Cottage Grove for an example. They were
Okay.
265, they're number 14, let's say that. So we could communicate with them and one of the first things is that they get a copy of the previous application. If they're gonna apply for the exact same one, there's a lot that can be copied and pasted.
okay, good. That's what I
Yeah.
want to hear, that it's easy for them.
Right, and there's gonna be just some minor things, and we tried doing this and it did not work out like we wanted to. Is where even the pre-application was supposed to pre-populate the application itself. And that did not work as we intended, so we had to scrap that. But we are trying to make it as simple as possible for a non-engineer to complete the application.
Great, thank you.
I wanna throw out there, you get 10 more minutes, so.
All right, okay, hey,
Okay.
as I said earlier, I can talk fast. So go to the next slide, please. So these are the contingency projects. So we have Lane County. So we give you an idea of, of what we're going for. Is it's this 0.6 mile long multi-use path between the city of Anita and Elmira. And this is straight from their application. I did some editing because they'll punch in some nice qualitative things about how important the project is, but we just want to talk about the project itself. So if you wanted to figure that out,
Mhm.
the key questions for this committee is, I mentioned before was project refinement, which is planning, or construction. So the advantage if you go for a project refinement focus is that the way we're setting it up is that we want the project refinement to be able to then take the results of that grant to have technical scoping and environmental prospectus, and to be able to take that information and turn that into a construction application. So that's the idea, is that they are better prepared to then apply for construction. And then during our outreach in the run up to the application solicitation, is we were telling everyone that if you are starting from scratch and you don't have, you haven't already done your planning, you haven't done that, do your project refinement first, because otherwise you're just throwing stuff together that,
Won't be successful.
so that's the pro. And the con is, of course, that we are that we're not putting things on the ground now. You're going to have inflation coming up. We have a climate, particularly with federal funds right now, where there may be a lot of reductions in future federal funding that then could impact this program and constructions in general. So we don't know what's happening. So
What did we do last time? Because I remember this conversation.
correct. So what we did last time is we broke it down to about 10%. So we thought we'd have about $15 million and we used 1.5 million for project refinement. And so we had like 4 different scenarios where we bumped up project refinement up to, I think, 3 million or 4.5 million, and we settled on 1.5 million. So when we did this, we figured we'd have around $30 million, and we said 3 million for project funding, keeping them around that 10%. And so we can go either way.
Do you have like a slide that this is what gets funded with this one and this one gets funded with the other?
Next slide, please. Oh, 2 slides. Yeah, and so
I'm all visual.
yeah, and so where I skip up on the bottom is where I have construction 15 and 10. It's not. It's actually like 9 and 9 again, but we don't show the all the different contingency projects. So the question is still where to apply. So we're showing the bottom one where it says focusing on maximizing project federally funded. Construction will be 12 projects going from 9 to 12 and totaling 34,704. And then the planning will go from 9 to 13. And so I apologize for the screw up on that. But next slide, I think there's some better. So here's an example. If you get rid of the total funding, we can fund it all. These slides are complicated, and Jess and I were actually hammering this out for probably about maybe 2 hours on Thursday, trying to get these slides down. And so with planning planning focus is 4.97 million, and the total amount of funding will be 32.4 million. And I'm going to step up to the
Yeah.
screen to point this out a little bit better.
Yeah.
So we do this, we end up with 32 million, and then we have $2.3 million in contingency funds that we can then spend either for Lane County or for the other projects, or so this $2.3 million would then go be available for construction. So that's what planning focus. And with construction, then we would end up with under planning focus, 34 million for, yeah, $4.9 million for planning, and then construction we get 3.1 million. And you can see where we end up. Where we fund the ones in the red, we end up funding all of it's 102,000, 91,000. If we just wait until March. We have $2.3 million available in construction funds if we fund the planning focus. So we're gonna fund $4.9 million in planning. We will end up with $2 million, $2,319,000 left over to fund construction. Then we go to that Lane County. Or then go to the other ones, which would be Klamath County and Cottage Grove. If we do the planning focus or construction focus. We're $30 million as that we end up with 4.281, almost $4.3 million going to construction. And then that could fund Lane County and make it better, or it could fund Klamath County, then Cottage Grove, and I forget what the third one was, which was number 18. So, which will then still get us down to here. So the key question between this and this is, can we fund Lane County? That's the bottom line with the whole thing. And if we can't fund Lane County, then we're gonna go to this, where we fund the three contingency projects in the red. And that's why it gets so complicated.
I want to crack this open for a discussion. I think I'm a little confused.
Yes,
As I am understanding it, it's choosing between two conceptual priorities, which is a greater investment in planning or a greater investment in construction.
correct.
And I think as a committee, that is an important sort of philosophical question we have to discuss.
I have a question that I think might be pertinent. So these ones that are coming forward for the construction. Have they already gone through this planning? How many of those, like last time, did the planning phase and now we're like, oh, we did all the planning. Now we're ready for the money. So how many of those are coming forward?
It's a mix. But what we did is the top 15 construction projects for federal all went through a technical scoping review by our consultant. So we have a very good idea of just what each project may actually cost, and we've had everything from within like 15% of what they provided to one was 192% difference. Higher. So these are these.
18%.
So if we were to focus on funding the planning portion, would we just be doing it twice?
If you're focusing on the planning, those did not go through the process, just the construction applications went through that process.
Okay,
I'm not sure that Alan answered your question. Was your question, which of the construction ones participated in project refinement? last
yeah,
cycle?
have any of these already done
I
that?
don't know the amount off the top.
So like, is project refinement working? Is what we're
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah,
decide.
more or less.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because we're only in cycle 2.
Yeah.
We don't have those completed yet. Because this is a brand new program. Now, with some of the projects have already gone through, for example, the Peabody for the 40-mile route. They have done so much of the preliminary engineering, et cetera, already. So that has been done for some of these applications, but not all of them, and some of them are starting from scratch. But in terms of an actual project refinement, we only have one that is completed or will be completed this. The rest are still in work.
Okay,
So we're narrowing in on the end of our time allotted for this. So can we have really clear, like, this is option A and this is option B?
Sure. Option A is to focus on planning. And so that gives more money to planning for future construction grants.
And it would be for this round.
It'll be for this round.
Okay.
Roberto, can you change to the previous slide that has kind of the conceptual questions on it?
There you go.
There we go.
One more. Oh, there we go.
And this is my whole philosophical branch of study was. Not that project refinement is theory, but this idea of, pragmatism, versus like taking the time to think, so. That is a really big question. I think, I don't know if we can just like, I am from a school of thought personally, in just like my work and everything that I do is like, I like putting things. In people's hands, I like putting things on the ground. Not that project refinement stops that from happening, but you could refine a project and it could in theory not go to construction ever. As well.
Correct.
We could be investing money in projects that never are built.
Correct.
Or we could be investing money in some refinements that make the projects a million times better than they would have been. And 5-10 years down the road, whenever, a year down the road, the projects are amazing. So like, I think it's a really big concept that I want us to sort of sit in. Maybe we don't have time to sit in it, but that's what I'm putting out.
Dip your toe
Yeah,
real
dip your
fast.
toe in it, like.
What are we thinking? Let's go around. A straw. Del, what do you think? Would you be more inclined to making sure that the money is going to the refinement or getting stuff?
I would go along with Andre there. I like to see stuff on the ground and see some results of our budgeting and labor.
All right, Aaron, what do you think?
I vote construction just because I know like inflation's eating up a lot of dollars, so I'd rather get stuff installed now.
Emma?
Construction with priority order until March 31st, 2024, because I don't want to incentivize jurisdictions to keep projects small when what we're looking at the list is not even complete projects for some of these, because we need to increase the funding and be able to build like head bridges in the state, which I'm not even sure we're seeing many of those come through yet. So construction focus, priority order until March 31st, 2024.
Andre?
And say that exact same thing right there.
Good. What do you think?
I'm gonna go the project refinement, and that is based on. I think this will help out the small local groups. Cities, even small counties that need to have that expertise in order to have a good construction process and not go over budget and this and that. And so it helps it gives the small jurisdictions money in order to have a successful construction project.
Yes, which is why we always have this conversation. So,
And Mavis, let you know that Lauren is also joined us virtually and has been sitting in. So.
Lauren, please bring some information to us.
Oh, I wish I could. You guys all make good arguments. I would go along with what Emma said about the construction.
Now this doesn't mean that we are completely axing any funding going towards refinement, correct?
No, we still have the $3 million for project refinement. This question was, will we give an extra $1.9 million to project refinement? Bringing that up to 4.9 million. So we're still getting a good 10% of federal funding towards project refinement, of federal funding for this grant cycle to project refinement, just like we did the last cycle. And the second portion here is, I spent a lot of time trying to go over this. It's really good because we are going to prioritize funding projects in priority order by March. If not, then we will then go by funding availability if that doesn't work out by March. So that point is taken care of. So this is just your question for refinement or construction, or if you have another idea.
As the person that has been wrestling with these numbers, what do you want us to do?
I'm very open to your suggestions. My personal preference is I'm a planner by nature. I spent 20 years in after transportation planning and airport planning. So I tend to lean towards you can't build what you haven't planned. That's my one argument. But your argument that getting stuff on the ground is important. Things may not get built, and the way we have planned this, that planning is the first 30%. We give them an option to where if this doesn't get built, then they don't have to reimburse the federal government of what they spent. I know that there are some where that's digressing, so I'll just stop right there. So. And that is my own personal preference, but that has nothing to do with the decision you're making. This just me is me.
Okay, so. In general, I'm seeing that the committee would like to move forward with the construction bid. Making sure that we're still getting a lot of the project refinement going, because it's already worked in. We're not taking that away. Take a vote. Do we have anything that we need to add before we take a vote? Because we're 5 minutes over. All right, I would, Emma,
Okay,
you said it so nicely. Can you do a motion for us?
yes, I move to approve the federal funding construction focused projects list. Did I do that right, Alan? Okay, where we will fund that list and then come March 31st, 2024, the remaining funds will be allocated to projects so that you can get as many dollars out the doors to multi-path projects in Oregon.
That is very concise. Perfect.
I'll second.
Those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Beth opposes. Lauren, I can't see you. Did you?
Sorry,
oppose?
I was trying to put something in the chat, but, no, I do not oppose.
Thank you.
you support?
One doesn't necessarily mean the other, right? Yes, I vote yes for that one.
Okay, so officially, okay. I'm gonna make the negative executive decision. We need to be back here at 2:30. We're lopping off a whole minute of our break. Go for it.
Do y'all want us to try to knife this cake now, or
Are we back?
Starting again, moving on to committee business. Reports. Okay, local bike ped advisory committee outreach subcommittee, Beth, Lauren and Dell. What do you got to say?
What do we gotta say, guys? What do you want to hear?
That you've been busy.
You guys have been busy, so how did it go?
It was a roaring success.
Got it. It was a roaring success.
Okay, I'll
Go,
just
go,
give you
go.
the brief overview
Yeah.
for the public, I suppose, because everybody else here knows what we did. But it was a two-parter. We had, well, it's a three-parter, because first we sent out letters months ago asking all Oregon Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committees, local committees, they aren't all called BPACs or anything like that, but all those local volunteers who help out a jurisdiction to make decisions. And so we sent out letters to the ones we knew. There are many that were not really, we didn't have a database of. And so that was a start, creating the database. We sent out a letter to all of their staff liaisons, et cetera, saying, what would you like, how could OBPAC help you? This is just a basic general question that we asked 3 times, one in the letter, and then we had, we attended the Oregon Active Transportation Summit put on by the Street Trust up in Portland, which was a couple of weeks ago now.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so the first night, Monday night, we had an evening session where anybody in the public or who was attending the conference could attend. We had a good turnout. It was in person. It was great. The following week, we did a follow-up because we didn't really want to have a hybrid. We were kind of scared that wouldn't work out. So we did a completely Oregon-wide Zoom meeting. And that was successful too. There was really good input there. So that's what happened. We have lists of input. Dell has updated our database. We have tons of ideas of how we can improve or you know, it's not like we need to improve, but we haven't outreached to the local BPACs anymore, in my knowledge before. So I know if we want to, I didn't know if we were presenting what the outcomes were, Roberto, or how we want to do that, or just to report that that's what we did and we have outcomes, and maybe we should consider them as part of our work plan.
So the next on my list is action on strategic to add to work plans. So.
I can
uh,
share the jam board if that's helpful, Beth.
Yes, please.
We did find an amazing thirst for more information sharing. That was the main thing.
We all, we composed this jam board and then Roberto gave each of us a, kind of organization of the big organizations. You can tell high impact, low impact, low effort on the left. High impact, low effort is the most, was probably what we'll end up doing. And to the right is high impact, high effort, upper right, low impact, high effort, lower right. This is my jam board that all three of us, I think, were asked to organize the jam board into these quadrants. These are all suggestions from other folks. And so we organize into the quadrants. That's mine. And we have other jam boards, probably Roberto could post.
Yeah, Lauren and Dale should have provided input.
Yeah, so there's Lauren's. I don't know what you want to do with this data. Raw data.
So I dropped in and I so appreciate the work the subcommittee is doing. You all are just awesome. So yay, let's celebrate that. That this happened. I think that it might be helpful for committee members who haven't engaged at all to know that there is a summary document. So if that could be maybe put a copy that put into today's meeting folder. So if people want to review what was heard, I think that's helpful to know what we're hearing across the state. And then if we could get to a point of recommending a few strategies, maybe some high impact, low effort, and if there's something that's really a lot of value, but also high effort, maybe we want to consider that, but just getting clear on what do we want to move forward, and then looping back to people and saying, we heard you, this is what we've heard, and here are the things that we're planning to take action on. We can't act on everything because we have limited capacity, is my proposal on a process for it. I don't know what pieces we plug into the recommended
Right.
strategies.
Yeah, it will take a lot to get from this to things in our work plan, because some of these things involve staff time. Sometimes we might want a new volunteer, we might want to make this group bigger in order to accommodate all this stuff. So this is, I'm handing it off to the rest of you folks, because I don't know where to go from here, but it's gonna be a while and a lot of decision making.
Would there be a potential for us to sort of allocate some time on one of our future meetings to like have a semi-structured work through of everything that's, I don't want to put any work in your, but as someone that's not on that subcommittee now, I'm like really interested to like have you maybe walk us through as a group, and we can like maybe, I don't know, I'm just putting that out there in the universe, so I'd be interested.
Easiest for you guys to, to ultimately decide as a group what we want to put into our future work plans.
Well,
This is
personally,
Lauren, as part of the committee, I would like to suggest, it doesn't look like we've combined these whiteboards yet, or whatever they're called. So I think as a committee, that's the next thing that we should do, is we should bring those together and come up with maybe our top 5, say, things, because like you said, that these are going to end up going to the staff to maintain, because a lot of it's going to end up being on their website, things on their website that will have to be maintained. So I think we could do a little bit further work on this as a work group.
So as a work group, can you guys refine it down just a smidge more?
That's
And
what,
then-
yeah, that's what I was suggesting, is just doing, maybe bringing back like 5 different action items that would help our outline local OBPACs.
Awesome. And then I think we should definitely put some time on the next agenda so that we can talk about that narrowing down and some movement forward on it, because we don't want to just collect the data. We want to actually do something with it.
I'm personally burned out on it. If Lauren, if you want to take that on, I'll be happy to, you do a rough draft or, rough list or your choice of 5 or you two together can do it. And then I'll give my input, but really, I'm done.
Well, you've done a lot. I agree. And I had to go on vacation, so I didn't really get a chance to do mine. But partly because I was getting burned out too. But yes, I would be happy to do that. And then we'll set up another meeting and then we'll come back to the rest of you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Jessica, what's up?
So I think this might be a really good activity once we've got the developmental backfill on board to have that person work through with you as well, because they're going to have a little bit more time and energy and kind of fresh perspective on things.
Okay, so when do you suggest that we do this?
I would say I'm not quite sure what the timeline is for the developmental, but like maybe sit on it till end of June-ish.
Does that sound good, Laura?
That's fine with me. Yeah, it could, Jessica or Roberto send out something. Some kind of a timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're still in the interview part for that position.
Oh, that'll be their first job then. That's awesome. Let me see if I can make this as confusing as possible.
But I'll put a hole in everyone's calendar so we have it already scheduled.
Perfect, thank you.
And but that's your update. Beth did a fantastic job. She monitored both of those meetings, and yeah, it's clear that the people out there want help, and we're going to be able to give it to them.
Awesome, thank you. We definitely want to plan moving forward. Next on my list is
Me.
funding.
STIP funding. Okay, so the STIP, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, was mentioned earlier by Susan. The next cycle to formulate the 2027 to 2030 STIP is going to be kicking off, which for those of us who have been in transportation for a bit and it's a whole decade later, it's like, whoa, we're on that STIP already? Okay. July 13th OTC will be in Pendleton, so you probably need materials by June 29th. And then September 14th is planned for Eugene for a tri-state, also in Eugene, kind of dual meeting on August 31st, the tentative material deadline. November 9th is Northeast Portland area. The end of October material deadline. So all of this to say the process is coming up. I think the two of us are on funding. Is that true?
True. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I'm saying that we should meet and figure out how to bring stuff forward to the committee and figure out how we can all engage effectively in this next STIP cycle, because this is where the OTC allocates big pies of money and we want to influence that process. So it's coming up. It's not quite on our front doorstep, but it's pretty soon. So I'm going to say we have an action item of putting our heads together and figuring out what's coming our way and how we effectively engage.
Perfect.
Do you have anything to add?
No, that's great. I'm looking forward to those conversations.
Okay, let's do that.
Sweet. And I was noticing one of those is in Pendleton. That is not 9-hour driving for me. So yeah, I
I'm
can.
gonna
do
put
Pendleton.
Maine this question. And Eugene is in my neck of the
And
woods.
Eugene is
There you
in
go.
So Emma, you're still not off the hook because we have the Mac.
Yeah, I'm ready for that too. I think maybe.
One quick thing on the STIP piece, since the first outreach meeting on that is July 13th, that's before the next OBPAC meeting. If you are thinking you're going to want to write a letter or submit anything formal, you need to make an action a vote as the committee to do that at this meeting.
I feel like we
Just-
should have a voice in the process. I don't know what that voice should
Yeah,
say
yeah.
beyond what we echoed last time and wasn't heard.
Oh, Susan?
Sorry, I was trying to find my little Zoom hand and I couldn't. So the July meeting, as I mentioned, is gonna be like state of the system. And then I think they're working on kind of what scenarios would be, what scenarios on how to spend the fund for September with a decision in November. I think that that's the cadence of the decisions coming up. So the July meeting is not a critical meeting from an engagement standpoint from OBPAC. I would say September or no, September is like a better time frame for that.
Okay,
I
forget
have-
what I just said to you then, Emma.
Hey, maybe this, are you willing to go to Pendleton on July 13th? And be our spokesperson for this, so I have some talking points that I'm gonna propose to the group for approval.
Yes, however, it's sounding like maybe we should do the next one on the list, not that first one, but the. Because
I think
Pendleton
a
is
more
first, right?
robust, yeah, so Pendleton's first on July 13th, and I think we should develop a more robust statement or recommendation for this step. But I was thinking we could say, hey, this is OBPAC, we care about walking and biking being well funded, we care about safety, here's the recent stats, pedestrian fatalities have been atrocious, here's how much they've increased. We also care about vulnerable roadway users and the inequitable outcomes that we're seeing in pedestrian safety data in particular. Just kind of speak to those three broad arching points that have been part of our committee conversations and say, you'll be hearing from us more, but we want it to be familiar faces, so we're starting to speak up. And kind of lay the foundation that we could then build on.
Yep, we can do that. So we would need a movement to one, send me there, and then two. I suggest by our next meeting that you guys have a draft letter that we can look at and therefore afterwards send to the OTC with our recommendations for that allocations for the step.
That sounds great. And Jessica, if you are able to point us towards previous step comments, just so we have that context and background to pull from, or Roberto, someone on staff, that would be really helpful so that we don't have to reinvent from scratch.
I can pull the letters from the last cycle. Because unfortunately, due to inflation, I think the talking points and years for completion are about the same despite the additional that we got.
Fabulous. So I kind of made a motion, but I need somebody to second it and we need to vote on it.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Lauren says aye.
Thank you.
Good,
Lauren.
good, good.
Yeah, so I will plan on attending the OTC in Pendleton. And Jessica, I'm gonna need help with that. Thank you. And then you two are going to get together and kind of come up with talking points and a game plan. And we'll move on from there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica, for speaking up.
Yes.
Or Susan, sorry.
Okay, so ASAP, Active Transportation Safety Action Plan. Do we have anything? And then Mac.
So for that one, I can provide a quick update. As Susan mentioned, at the beginning of the meeting, I'm going to be starting a rotation with our delivery and operations group, traffic safety division on June 1st, both to stand up the rapid response pedestrian bicycle safety program that Karen and Mac came to talk to the committee about a couple meetings ago. We're basically going to be calling that ASAP, Active Transportation Safety Action Program, because it gets at what we're trying to do and has a poignant acronym. So the timeline roughly for developing that program, we are currently still at the same bullet points that were refined based on OBPAC's feedback back in March and approved by OTC, where that funding doesn't actually become available for us to start doing things with that new program till fiscal year 2025. So we're gonna spend the next year getting that structure together, and we'll be bringing that to OBPAC just for input as we go along the way. So that is not going to be something that you don't hear about. Then we have a final structure and come back. It's going to be kind of a regular meeting topic with you all going forward. There's also another effort that I'm going to be working with that team on called the Vulnerable Road User Safety Assessment. That is a requirement for all states to complete, that was part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that big federal funding package from last year. Basically, this is a requirement for all 50 states, to all 52 departments of transportation that USDOT oversees, to do a assessment of pedestrian and bicycle crashes using a safe systems approach. So that's something we'll be talking about with this group a little bit more. It's kind of a new lens that looks at safe roads, safe users, safe crash response, these 5 different filters for looking at safety. That is also the new policy lens for safety in Oregon's state transportation plan update, and also looking at social equity demographic factors in vulnerable user safety outcomes, which is something that this group and ODOT has a little bit of a head start on, thanks to the advocacy from OBPAC and research that Josh Roll has led for ODOT. So taking a look at what are our trends, identifying not just on the ODOT system, but statewide, what are our hotspots, whether that is points on a map or types of locations like intersections on urban arterials. And then doing outreach with those communities where those hotspots are located across the state to identify some initial strategies and actions to address those problems that needs to be adopted into our state highway safety improvement program, which in Oregon is the TSAP, the Transportation Safety Action Plan, by November 15th of this year. So we learned about this requirement. Maybe I think we got clarification from the feds in February, need to have something adopted by OTC in November. So very quick turnaround. But it is going to be, this is our first time doing this, and it's going to be a requirement and part of our Transportation Safety Action Plan update that we do every few years going forward. So that is another thing I'm going to be working with that group on. And there I have OBPAC worked into the fundamental review structure for that effort with our contract with our consultants for that. So that's another thing that will be coming to this group starting in July. So nothing really big other than we'll be talking more in depth about safety programs and efforts starting this summer. And if y'all have any questions, just right off the bat, I will be pulling together some more background information for you all to share between now and the July meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
Matt,
Question.
Question for
Sorry.
Jessica. You said pedestrian and bicycle crashes. I'm curious if people using scooters and skateboards and other active modes are also going to be included in the vulnerable road user assessment.
I believe that is. I will need to double check though, for there is a specific definition that Federal Highway Administration wants us to use for this vulnerable roads user safety assessment. And it's a little bit different than how we've defined vulnerable road users in the TSAP historically, because we have historically included like elderly drivers as vulnerable road users in TSAP. That definitely is not going to be in here, but I believe that that scooters are in the federal one, but I will need to double check and look back with you on that one.
Thanks. Any other questions on this thing? Sweet, Mac.
Okay, so we had appointed Bob Giandeff and Nick Meltzer as the pedestrian and bicycle representatives on the Mobility Advisory Committee. Both of them are resigning, so the question before us is how do we want to proceed as a committee? I think Jessica was reaching out to mobility staff, and I'm curious if you have any updates before I proceed with this and get to a recommendation.
I do not at this point, but let me do a quick triple check search through my inbox that nothing came in while I was out the last few days.
I'll keep chatting while you look for it. So I think it's really great that we have them appointed. Now we're at a transition point where we get to kind of step back and reassess and say, okay, is this working or not? Based on their experience in some of the conversations, it seems like the map isn't currently set up to operate in a way that's really conducive to having a bicycle and pedestrian representative serving on the community and being effective in a kind of holistic way. So changes I think need to be made before we appoint new representatives and have that be a kind of worthwhile process and strategic. I think it would be a whole lot more strategic to focus our efforts on looping back to the ODOT executives we met with before and saying, hey, where is the safety and mobility stakeholder engagement initiative? Where's that at? How's that moving forward? Because that's the bigger picture view of how are the different committees set up? What are their purposes? Who's engaging? How do we make this work better at a kind of system level as opposed to engaging with one specific committee? That is a lot of meeting time, and I think some positive changes have been made, but not on the scale that I think the Secretary of State audit and we have been hoping for a few years now. So see if Jessica has any updates, but that would be my tentative recommendation to this group and say, hey, we'd love to engage on this bigger picture process. That the timeline was a 6-month process that they presented to us back in December. We've seen a tiny bit of progress on the short-term items, I think, and how the NAC meetings are being run potentially, but the really substantive items that were more medium and long-term, bigger system change efforts have, I believe, been put to the side during the legislative session, which, legislative session is busy. I get that. And I think that's going to be a more effective kind of use of our time and energy to affect change on those, the half of those walking and biking and trying to survive on our transportation system.
And I double checked, Emma, I do not have any updates since we brought this up the beginning of the month. So, from mobility staff, that other than they were holding for direction.
You have any additional context or information that you want to chime in with?
Since I was searching email while you were providing your comments, I'm a little crosshaired.
I will summarize again. So basically it said, probably not worthwhile to have bike and ped refs on the map right now. More important to engage on the safety and mobility stakeholder engagement initiative with the higher level system look.
And talk.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think it's appropriate to hold off until you get a status update on the processes that have already been discussed with the group.
So how do we follow through and make sure that that is happening?
Susan's still on the line.
Here she is.
Hi, can you guys hear me, see me? I'm not showing up.
Megan, so
Okay.
We can.
Can we, sorry, can you repeat the question?
how do we, so the MAC, we've decided that having people there
Mhm.
representing isn't necessarily the way to go because it is a very frustrating place to be. And we're not really moving the needle. Instead, we want to focus on the policy and things that came out of that audit. We need to make sure that those things are actually happening.
Mhm.
So how do we go about taking that hornet's nest instead of the other one?
Well, I think that, oh, there's a weird echo. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica, the mobility staff are aware that Nick and Bob are no longer participating. So I think that's an important note. And at this point, I think it's ODOT or it's OBPAC's prerogative to, you know, I would probably, in your role of advising the agency, the executive leadership kind of, the appropriate executive leadership person to kind of help ensure that OBPAC's like voice is heard in this situation, in my opinion, would be Karen. And so I feel like OBPAC has the opportunity to advise Karen about how you would like to engage in some of the kind of more upstream policy components, or understand the progress from the concern out of the Secretary of State audit. And then, and so at that point, I feel like it would be Karen determining how to bring together or not, or what the appropriate action would be within among her peers on how to engage with OBPAC. Not, I wouldn't explicitly say like Karen's your mark. I would say that you can, you know, Karen, you can say to write a letter to Karen, or, you know, reach out to Karen and be like, Karen, you know, we're not participating in the Mobility Advisory Committee through representation of Bob and Nick for these reasons. There's still some outstanding issues from the Secretary of State audit and from the conversations that were had with executive leadership, you know, and Cooper Brown and things. Can you please help advise us on how to bring together, you know, executive leadership, or just to get an update on where some of these issues are. And the reason why I think now is probably the time to do it is because legislative session is coming to an end. And for folks in the room who aren't aware, our executive leadership gets hyper focused during the legislative session. Sine die is like mid-June or so, and that's no, Sine die is the end of June. And so it's kind of an opportunity to try to pick up some of the things that have been languishing, as it sounds as though this is an issue that had been languishing. So that's my advice, a friendly letter to Karen.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to word a friendly letter to Karen?
Yeah, does you all want input as a committee, or can we kind of keep this rolling?
We would like to see it.
See it, but not have to do, I could do a week review and I could compile and submit. I just don't want to have to wait till July to get the letter so that August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We are running out of time, and I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. Unless somebody has something. So committee health, we're going to come back to that because we're going to have some celebratory stuff going on. We are currently in the process of getting replacements. It has been kind of sidelined by a new governor, which has a new system. So we will discuss a little bit more of that later, but it is in the works. And the July co-chair elections. Please, somebody replace me. So those elections will be in July. So if you want to throw your hat in the pool, please let us know so that we can make that happen. And then we are 1 minute. Any comments? Because we have 1 more minute. Sweet. Robin, please come forth and give us wisdom.
I'll do my best. Roberto, there's a PDF document in your Google shared folder.
Okay, just 1 minute.
And welcome, Robert. So Robert Spurlock is also joining us, and he is the OBPAC appointed rep on this Great Street Advisory Committee, or I don't know what the committee name is. The Committee for Great Streets. And so thanks, Robert, for joining.
That's not the right PDF.
Good to be here.
But it's
Nice to see you all.
but I'll start talking. We added some so you all got some information in your packet that was pretty high level on Great Streets. I'll back up one step. Yep, I'm Robin, Great Streets Program Manager. Talked to you before, and then Robert's going to be joining for most of the color commentary and probably more interesting information about the Great Streets project review process. So he's, just as a reminder, your representative. We've got 6 folks that are outside of ODOT on our project review team. That includes Robert from your OBPAC appointee. We've got a Public Transportation Advisory Committee appointee, and then we have 4 just open seats. We've got a couple folks that are from any part of ODOT. So we did similarly, we did like an open seat nomination for folks that could have been at any level in the organization. Like they could be an intern, they could be a temporary employee. We could have had any number of assistant directors. And then we've got 8 people, mostly from other divisions, plus Leanne. So traffic, safety, commerce and compliance. We've got a region manager and a district manager, planning manager, and then Office of Social Equity and Climate Office.
And Robin, would you remind me where the presentation is? Or
It's on the screen.
okay, fantastic.
I just found it, so I figured I'd do the screen share, Roberto.
Okay.
Thank you.
So next slide. It's like a old-timey like talkie cranky film, the way it rolls up there.
Like a story map.
Yeah, like a story map. So we've already talked about the program quite a bit. The background slide should be familiar to you. But a quick reminder, the goal of this program is really to support people moving within communities as well as through communities. So the program supports projects that implement designs to create safe and convenient access for folks walking, biking, using transit, but also safety improvements for people driving in the corridor. Next slide. Projects first and foremost need to demonstrate that they are mitigating for safety risk factors, and then also that they're primarily geared towards improving multimodal access and connectivity into the local network. Every project has to be on an ODOT-owned state highway. For right now, the region's submitted projects. And then, of course, projects need to be part of an adopted plan to be considered. Next slide. This is just a quick overview to give you a feel for, I think I came to this group when we had the pre-applications, but we had 21 pre-applications that were submitted, and for final applications, that number drops down to 15. 2 of those were planning only projects. But our funding request stayed right around 4 times the amount of available funding, and the average project request size went up. So we're looking at about $9.4 million for each of the project requests. Part of the reason for that kind of expansion was both elements being added to the projects and some more certainty being developed, and then also in our pre-application review, some of the feedback to the regions was that there was a number of spot improvements, and we just encouraged them to expand things out to really complete the need for an entire corridor where they could. Next slide. In terms of the application documents, so the regions started with a form that was very similar to what the project review team used for their scoring, and was focused around the criteria that we're evaluating projects on. But they used that information to improve their business case form. So their actual submittal was a business case. This is the standard project scoping starting point. So this document will live with the project from now until it's complete. They also submitted a supplemental form. The supplemental form comes from 2 other documents. So one is from a blueprint for urban design, design concurrence, design verification form. And then also the ODOT's equitable engagement guide has kind of some front end things for project teams to keep in mind when they're starting projects. So both of those things are what we utilized for that supplemental form. And then a cost estimate. Most of the regions use the cost estimate template for this. So it's got some additional information about risk and some climate and equity considerations in there. This is just an overview of some of the infrastructure kind of improvements. One thing I will say is that the project review team's kind of initial impression was that they felt like some of the things that they were expecting to see in terms of like gateway features, street trees, kind of really some of the more humanizing elements of these corridors weren't showing up in projects yet. And I think that we will get there through the next iteration of design. But it is a comprehensive corridor scale improvement. That is the goal of the program. And we're still working on fleshing out those details as we move forward with the projects that have been selected at this point. A quick run through, we talked about this evaluation criteria already. But safety and multimodal connectivity, 50 points each. From a safety perspective, we're looking both at risk factors. So high speeds, vehicle volumes, anything like that that would contribute to risk factors for people walking or biking in the corridor. And we're also looking at crash histories. So each one of those was evaluated at about 25 points each. Multimodal accessibility, just looking to make sure that the project demonstrates improved connectivity and improved access. The equity piece for 25 points, 15 of that came from the Transportation Disadvantaged Index, and then the other 10 points was the project review team wanting to see how well that information was now coming out in what's being proposed for the project. So is it addressing kind of community needs from that perspective? Climate, we had 3 different climate questions, and one of them is around making sure that the project achieves climate goals by enhancing transportation alternatives. Most projects got to the full 10 points for this, but by the end of their next round of scoping, they should all be about 10 points for this. The other piece was around shortening trip distances. So this kind of helps build a feel, trip distances and trip times specifically for people walking, biking, or taking public transportation. This will help build a feel in for also capacity to reach some of the choice riders and improving safety conditions for folks that are walking and biking and taking transit. So it's kind of a 2-prong review there. And then the final climate piece is around materiality and construction methods. Local support and engagement, we wanted to understand that the projects were really supported by the community and that they were coming from a place that had maybe come out of a previous planning process. So something that was a community identified need. We wanted to understand the propensity for working with the community through the next phases of design construction and then into completion. One thing that we heard from talking with some of the community-based organizations and other agencies was that we do a pretty good job of outreach during planning phases, but then once projects kind of move into the design and engineering phases, they hear less about what's going on with the project and have less opportunities for input. So we're hoping to do a better job of that with these projects. And then of course, like the last 3 categories there, leverage, project readiness, and state of good repair, were just 10 points each, wanting to understand what kind of other funding, either federal or state funding, is contributing to the project, kind of understanding where the project is in design and what level of certainty there is that it would be completed within this 5-year timeframe that we have, and then making sure that what we don't want to be doing with any of these projects are any kind of like surface level improvements if the underlying infrastructure is failing. So this program we can replace storm infrastructure if we need to, paving if it's needed in the corridor, needed to be part of the cost estimate and project description at this time. Same thing for like signal upgrades, lighting upgrades, things like that. Okay, next slide. Now that we've built the suspense sufficiently, we have a 200% project list. So obviously not 150%, but we started from 400%. So we're about halfway there. And one of the things to note here, and then I'll turn it over to Robert so that he can give overall impressions. We're going to go through these projects, each of them one at a time, so you get a better idea of what's being proposed. But we had a pretty clear Astoria, US 30 and Astoria on Basin Avenue was our highest scoring project with 160 points and kind of 6 points above the next one on the list. But then the last 3 projects, really last 4 projects on the list were all really close, and they're very different projects. So the project review team really felt like that we would be doing the program a disservice to kind of arbitrarily draw a line somewhere in there when all of them kind of still have some more opportunity for fleshing out more information about the project and things like that. So 200% seem to make good sense to everybody at this point. We've also got pretty good distribution across the state and across the regions, so none of the regions felt like it would be overly burdensome for them to do the additional scoping. So I'm going to hand it over to Robert so he can talk a little bit about his overall impressions.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. It's so great to see you all. Wish I could be there in person, but here I am in Portland. And so first, I just wanted to let everyone know what an awesome job Robin has been doing on leading this. So thanks, Robin. You've made it really easy to plug into what's honestly a pretty complex project. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces here. And so it's been cool to witness how smoothly Robin has shepherded it all through. So I just want to let folks know a few things about how this process has gone from my perspective as the representative from OBPAC on the project review team. So it was a lot of material to review. It was a significant time investment, but kind of what I was alluding to with my thanks to Robin is that the materials were provided to us in a way that made it fairly straightforward in how to score the projects and how to kind of do apples to apples scoring when a lot of these projects are pretty different from each other. But one thing that I think was apparent to everyone on the project review team was that there's a lot of good projects. We like to say that there were no bad projects. Well, I think once I dug a little deeper, maybe there was like one bad project, maybe 2 bad projects. But I mean, they weren't bad. It's not like we're widening highways here, or like in that sense, there really were no bad projects. There were a lot of projects that we were really excited about. And I think people talked about how it was cool to see that there's just as much need from big cities as there is from really small communities that are surrounded by huge rural expanses, just as much need in basically every corner of the state. And we felt like the whole slate of applications were representative of that need, of that kind of diversity of the need. Personally, my favorite part about the whole process was kind of, or so far the process isn't over, but it was summed up in one of the questions that the applicants had to respond to. It was something along the lines of, tell us how ODOT's social equity lens has influenced which project you selected to put forward for this proposal. And so reading through all those answers for all the different projects, I mean, it really showed that the Great Streets program is transformational in the way that people think about the work, that people within ODOT are thinking about the work and how it intersects with equity. So I think this program has the potential to just lead to a paradigm shift within ODOT. There were a lot of folks, as Robin described, there's a lot of folks on the project review team who are within different parts of ODOT. And I heard some of them talk about how much they've enjoyed seeing the bike ped side of ODOT, because they don't usually get to see that side of ODOT. And so just on that individual level within the organization, I think it's been impactful in that way. It's, yeah, I think I'm just looking at my notes here. I think there's just a lot of hope that as many of these projects can be funded as possible, and that this can lead to, that this program can continue and continue to be funded. Some people, it was inspiring how some of the folks on the review committee were thinking extremely aspirationally, like, you know, these projects, as good as they are, they could do even more, like more speed limit reductions, and like Robin was saying, more kind of furnishing type improvements, which it sounds like can still be coming, like street trees and things like that. But a desire to really transform every single road into a place. And I don't know if all of these, I don't think all of these projects are doing that, but they're all a step in the right direction. And then there were a lot of comments or a lot of conversation around how the process could be made better in the future, but a lot of nitpicking stuff, because like for a new process, it's been running incredibly well. But one thing that someone said that kind of resonated with me, someone was talking, I don't remember who said this, Robin probably remembers, but they were suggesting that it would be helpful to see what percentage of funding for a given proposed project is proposed to go to roadway reconstruction relative to the other components of the project. So in other words, most of these projects have an element of roadway reconstruction. That's one reason why they were selected to be proposed. It's a lot of these projects are places where the pavement is in disrepair. But as a reviewer, it was hard to know if maybe most of the actual project cost is going to go toward roadway reconstruction, which the concern that was expressed is that there's other funding sources that can pay for that. Whereas this is one of the few funding sources that can add new, you know, for example, sidewalks or protected crossings. So yeah, just to wrap up, because Robin's still gonna dig into each of these projects, but I just wanted to also point out one of the things I really appreciated is that a lot of the information provided for these projects there was no way to make it purely objective. I think safety data and crash data was a good example of that. Like, yes, we have data, but it's not 100% reliable. And also crash data doesn't even tell the full story of like the potential risk on some of these corridors. But I think that as a group, we got to a place where we were all really comfortable kind of balancing objectivity with just kind of trusting the process and trusting the information that we were able to glean through the applications and through everyone's kind of understanding of the current conditions in these corridors. So it was, I think everyone did a job of like striking a good balance between subjectivity and objectivity in the review. Overall, just a really great process so far, and I'm excited about these projects. So I'll turn it back to Robin.
Cool. Thanks, Robert. If you could put that back up on the screen. So the first project was US 30 Basin Street in Astoria. This was the committee's #1 ranking project. It also was our highest scoring from a safety and highest scoring from the multimodal access piece. Wanted to mention for you all that this project has been in front of the MAC. They're currently doing a test run on the corridor because of some of the feedback that came out of that process. And it is on a reduction review route. This corner has higher than usual crash frequency, so it's a hot spot. And then also has 13 of the 158 crashes that occurred in this corridor between 2016 and 2021. So 8.2% of them were ped bike involved crashes. So that was among one of the highest in our list of projects. So it's a $7.4 million project. Next slide. And then Robert's here for the color commentary on the fun part of the project. So
Yeah, not much to add here. Just I think everyone definitely saw the need here, and some of these applications were written by like seasoned. There was a lot of disparity between the different regions and the different staff who submitted these in terms of kind of their savviness in writing. Even though these aren't technically grants, it's kind of written like a grant application. But some projects were just good enough projects that it didn't matter kind of what the application said. It was just clearly a really good project. And I feel like this was one of those.
Next slide. So Astoria is basically a 4-lane to 3-lane road reduction and adding bike lanes and pedestrian crossings on it. For the next projects, our second ranked project was Hermiston. This one was, let's see, this is the number 3 in terms of safety score and number 2 from a multimodal perspective.
Can I ask a question? I'm so sorry. On the Astoria thing, why did it go to the MAC? Because it's not a reduction, it's just paint.
It's on a reduction review route, and I don't know exactly what the primary reason it initially went to the MAC, but it was just at their meeting in a couple months back. So
I know that this had gone to the MAC because of a refuge island, and Bob and Nick spoke up and said, hey, instead of narrowing the refuge island, let's talk about a little bit of lane and striping reduction. So that it was recently discussed because of that. I'm not sure if that project is part of this Great Streets application or separate.
yeah, it's the same location, and there are at the pedestrian crossing locations, there are refuge islands. So it doesn't show up in the cross section, but where the center turn lane is, at the place where there's crossing, there are refuge islands.
Another reason for this one going to the MAC is we're actually using SWIP funding to implement it this summer, fall as a pilot with some temporary pedestrian refuge islands that are a new product that we're trying out. So it's some things that we might use in that ASAP rapid response program later. But it's that refuge island that's a vertical horizontal constraint that triggers that reduction in carrying capacity review.
Okay, but this isn't gonna get sidelined and hung up forever because it's what it is.
Past tense went to MAC, I think. I don't know that it would need to go back.
Does it need to go back to MAC, or is that done?
Well, the part that's been to the MAC is for the temporary refuge island, as Jessica was saying. So go back to the MAC for the permanent project piece. There's a bunch of, I think with all these projects, like one thing that is important to keep in mind is even when they're, you know, as Robert was saying, some of them have some elements of roadway reconstruction pieces, but the primary point of the program is that they're selected, and these locations are selected for improvements to safety and for improved multimodal connectivity. So that's part of the conversations that we'll be having with the MAC is like, it's not an option to take out the primary elements of any of these projects. And we've also been working with the mobility office staff to just help kind of prepare those conversations. So we made a very intentional, like early on in the development of the Great Streets program, some people had suggested maybe we just avoid all projects on reduction review routes altogether. But we did not, that's not an element of this program. So about half of these projects are on reduction review routes and half are not.
Thank you for your insight.
Yeah. So we're not shying away, I guess, from going to the MAC is the, Okay, so our next project, this one's out in Region 5. Like I said, this is our number 2 project, but it was number 3 for safety, number 2 for multimodal access, and this was the second highest from an equity perspective. This is another corridor where it has a pretty high level of risk from both pedestrian and bike risk score. This was an $11 million project. You can go to the next slide. And there's a Safe Routes to School funded project that's right in the middle of this corridor. And this basically is to extend the improvements on 207 on either side of that Safe Routes to School project. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to add for.
Just, yeah, quickly, I think this one was kind of a no-brainer for folks. Everyone's really excited about it. It scored really high for equity, and just reading the narrative about like the population that lives in this area and the fact that there's a school here and there's hardly any sidewalks and no real good bike facilities and hardly any crossings on this facility. It just seemed like exactly the type of project that we're looking for. So good project. And there was also, this project talked a lot about community engagement in a way that I don't think any of the other projects really did, or few of them did. This one to me had the most meaningful community engagement throughout. It was community engagement that's really led by the Latino community in Hermiston.
Next slide. Thanks, Robert. All right, so Region 4, Chiloquin. This is Oregon 422, and then a 422 spur that's a connection into their downtown. This was the number 3 scoring projects, highest in terms of highest scoring project from an equity perspective, but is number 7 from safety on the safety score, and number 9 for multimodal access. This was one of the more interesting conversations I think that the PRT had, the project review team. There's some crash history in the corridor. So 10 crashes, 2 of them involved pedestrian or cyclists. But then the risk score is actually pretty low. So this was the lowest scoring from a pedestrian or bicycle risk, but it's a pretty important connection, good opportunity to work with some of the tribal communities. Next slide.
I just time check, you have about 3 minutes left.
Okay. Skip through these a little quicker then. Next slide. So the other one is Mount Angel. This is another one that's been in front of the MAC already. This one was pretty low in terms of crash history. Now you go ahead and skip to the slide with the pictures. This is the lowest dollar amount project as well. Kind of a few different things going on here. If you're not already familiar with this project, it's got the green line there on the right-hand side is the parallel bike route. So the city would be installing a parallel bike route. And then along the corridor, there's kind of a mix of protected bike lane, shared bike lane, pedestrian improvements, new sidewalk, pedestrian crossings, and then some shared lane as it transitions back out of town. Robert, do you want to add anything on that one?
No, in interest of time, we should
Okay.
just keep going.
All right, the last 3 are the ones where they're pretty different. So we've got Gearhart, which was $12 million. This one was number 2 from the safety ranking, but then number 10 from multimodal access. There have only been 2 pedestrian or bike crashes in this location, but it is the highest from a pedestrian risk score. It's also got quite a bit of leverage already at play, with opportunity to leverage onto ADA project there and an existing project that's the signal replacement. This one has also been in front of the MAC from their planning efforts. And then Ontario, not a lot of crash history here. This was really more about, you can go to the next slide. This one's more about a connection underneath the bridge over the Snake River. So a tie into the trail network. I think there was a lot of kind of PRT conversation about whether or not this is actually a justifiable use of Great Streets program funding. And then last project, next slide, is the project in Portland, so US 30 bypass, Lombard and Denver intersection. This one is the highest scoring from a bike risk, number 2 from a pedestrian risk. And then this corridor has of 64 crashes, 11 of those have involved a pedestrian or someone biking. So that's 17.2% of the crashes in this corridor. That was almost double the next highest corridor in the state. This would extend the road diet, buffered bike lane all the way up to the Denver intersection, improvements at Denver. And then there's likely going to be some leverage in the city of Portland kind of crossing improvement project on Fenwick. Okay, so next slide.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought something compelling about that one was really creative, probably the most creative use of the right of way of any of the projects through a partnership with the sewer agency with the city of Portland. And then I think they said that there's a homeless shelter on this corner too. So this would really serve a very vulnerable population.
Yeah, and that intersection, right, Jessica, before you scroll away from it, that's the Denver intersection. So on the right-hand side, there's a slip lane where the cones are, and that triangle there would basically turn into a big stormwater improvement area and maybe plaza space in the current proposal. All right, so next steps. So we will be, projects go back to the regions for additional scoping, wrapping up some feedback for the regions from each of the kind of program managers like traffic safety, climate, and project delivery. The project review team will come back together at the end of August to recommend a final 100% project list, and that recommendation will go directly to the Transportation Commission at their November meeting. So by October, we'll have final projects selected. And then just last slide. We've already covered most of that. So if folks have any kind of general questions or comments or feedback, happy to take those at this time.
Thank you very much. It looks wonderful. Robert, it is so fun to see your fuzzy face. And with that, we are on to our 10-minute break that kind of got you into. So be back here at 3:45. So you have
See y'all later.
Thanks,
Robert.
Bye.
So we've got another quick break. Do y'all want to try to shove cake in your faces during this great break? Or do you want to save that for the end?
Speaking of Oreos, thank you.
Are you ready?
Oreos.
All right. We are all back. Excuse the cake eating because we are going to continue. However, Carl is going to give us a active transportation update for the city and region here in Medford. And Jessica, do you want to say a few words?
No, just thanks to Carl for coming to share with us today about the work that City of Medford is leading that is pretty darn exciting, and for hosting us in their fine city today.
Thanks. If I stand up here.
That sounds wonderful.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for making time on your agenda for us. Is Suzanne from our BPAC, or I guess our Active Transportation Advisory Committee on as well? I think she. Okay, I thought she might be. I didn't actually talk to her directly.
She joined virtually earlier, but I don't see her on the participants list right now.
I thought she might be giving an update as well, but I'll give it. Hi, everyone. I'm Carl McNair, Transportation Manager for City of Medford. I'm in the Public Works Department. And I don't have much of a general update for you on Medford stuff or local stuff. I really just wanted to present on a project we have coming up this fall. And it's exciting multimodal project. So it's on Main Street downtown. We actually, if you go to the next slide. So we had about 2 years ago now, we had Main Street come up on our pavement overlay list. And so we always look at that list for, are there any changes we want to make to the street? We knew from various plans and things that we wanted changes on Main Street. We just didn't really know what they should look like. And so we undertook a study. But I think I'm actually getting ahead of my PowerPoint presentation. So next slide, please. So Main Street is at the heart of Medford. It's been many different things over the years. There was a trolley running down Main Street at one point. By the 1950s, it was Highway 238, primary route between Jacksonville and Points West and Medford and Highway 99. Next slide, please. Yeah, so Main Street back in 1953 was projected to carry like 16,000 vehicles a day. In the 1970s, in a study that was done, the reality is that in 2020 it carries about less than 5,000 vehicles a day, and it's a part of a one-way couplet with 8th Street downtown. Compared to 99, we're carrying another one-way couplet in downtown, and portions of Central Avenue are already 2 lanes. Main Street is 3 lanes. It's carrying 5,000. Central's carrying about 12,000 with 2 lanes. So it seems pretty obvious that it's an overbuilt, overcapacity street at this point. So next slide, please. We had a lot of different planning documents telling us we should do something different with Main Street. Our TSP had a project to reconfigure Main Street. In the vision statement, the TSP talks about more multimodal people being able to walk, bike, and take different modes to reach different destinations. Next slide, please. We did a 2040 vision plan. I believe this was done in 2019, 2020. This was actually done by the city manager's office. It wasn't a public works or a planning document. It was very community led, and there's several action items in this document that actually point to similar things, like action item 18.5, build a network of separated paths downtown. We don't really have extra right-of-way downtown, so where can we do that? The streets seem like the only place you could really do that. Next slide, please. And then finally, there's a regional active transportation plan that the Jackson County and the MPO led in creating, and that plan identified Main Street as a high priority need because of its connection to the Bear Creek Greenway and providing connection from the Bear Creek Greenway, which is really our regional spine, to other neighborhoods and other destinations. Next slide, please. From an equity standpoint, Main Street, the 3rd mile buffer has very high 0 and single vehicle ownership households. high percentage of poverty compared to the area as a whole, so. You know, the case for providing other modes from an equity standpoint really speaks for itself here. Next slide, please. So yeah, we're planning to pave it later this year, July, August timeframe. And when that popped up on our pavement overlay forecast, we said, okay, we need to figure this out because all the planning documents are very general. We also have Riverside, Highway 99 over here on our pavement overlay list for next year. And so we included that in the study, as well as Court and Central, which is the other half of that couplet through the city to really try and get a complete vision of what these streets would look like. Next slide, please. So yeah, we hired Kittleson to help us. We needed help coming up with kind of all the different possibilities, doing all the traffic analysis and doing public outreach. We knew this was going to be a big deal for Medford right in the downtown, and we wanted to make sure we were doing a good job of communicating with the public. And so we held a couple open houses. Next slide, please. We started with a whole lot of options, almost 50 different concepts for the 3 streets. We got some public input out of our first open house, which was in person, narrowed that down to 11 concepts, which we did more detailed analysis on, and then ultimately came up with some recommended options. Next slide, please. The people that showed up for
70 voted no build.
Oh, yeah. I will explain that a little bit, but you know, the people who showed up for our in-person house were all very excited about the ideas and they were interested in this kind of thing. We didn't have people who were against the project showing up at the open house. That really came in the online survey, which was our second. And we were restriping McAndrews, a portion of McAndrews Road, which was a major arterial through town at the time. And there was a local radio host who was very against that project and any types of these projects. And I think a lot of his listeners responded. We got a lot of comments about McAndrews Road in our online survey for Main Street and Riverside.
Were they all different people? Because sometimes they don't. They aren't.
We couldn't tell for sure. You know, we didn't see a lot of just copy and paste comments, but yeah, it was an uncontrolled survey, so we don't know for sure. But we did get 210 responses that voted for some type of change on the online survey, and talking with Kittleson, they felt like that was actually a pretty high number for a community of Medford size to get that many responses and support. So next slide, please. We also surveyed our Downtown Medford Association. I think they sent this survey out to something like 600 people, and we got about 100 responses. So but the people, particularly Main Street people, were in favor of. We have more concerns about Riverside, and I'm not going to get into depth on Riverside. I'm trying to stick to Main. We're still working through the things on Riverside. Next slide, please. So we had our local Siskiyou Velo Cycling Club put a petition together and went to a festival that was going on in Medford and gathered signatures. Rogue Valley Times, our new newspaper, put out a survey very recently, which, you know, if you combine the 2 positive and the 2 negative, it's like 45% in favor, 55% against. So actually pretty evenly split for another non-scientific, uncontrolled survey. The people that chose to respond were pretty evenly split. And that actually talks about Main Street and Riverside. We had no involvement with the question, and it's kind of worded a little funny, but overall, people seem to be about evenly split. Medford School District is very supportive of it. We actually applied for a rapid response grant through Safe Routes to School. We're going through that process now, but the Medford School District gave us some great letters of support as part of that process, as did RBTD. And then we've gotten lots of emails, letters, and phone calls that are mostly negative to the primarily directed at the council, but also some positive, which people are more inclined to tell you when they're against something and when they're for something. So we have gotten some positive responses as well. Next slide, please. We went through a bunch of our boards and commissions. The short story, everyone supported Main Street. There are more concerns about Riverside and Central, very a lot more traffic. But we ended up going to the city council late last year, and they told us to move forward with Main Street at that point. And technically, it's the public works director's decision, but we wanted to check in with our council and make sure they were on board. We got about half of the council was new this year, so we ended up going back to them in April and still got a favorable recommendation. And the majority of them have a couple of council, that's the new councilors that were in favor of this, but the majority were on Main Street. So please, next slide. So this is what Main Street looks like today. We have parking on both sides, 3 travel lanes. It's part of a one-way couplet. Pretty basic Main Street. Next slide, please. And this is what we're proposing. So we'll still have parking on both sides. We'll have 2 travel lanes, and that 3rd travel lane will become a 2-way bike facility on the south side of the road. Parking.
Why did you choose the south side?
So that was, we did look at both, but it was Kittleson's recommendation. I think one of the primary reasons is it puts the westbound traffic closer to the vehicles. So they're traveling the same direction, and the contraflow traffic has a little more space and buffer from the vehicles. Yeah, so we're going through design on this right now. We're between 60% and 90% trying to work out all the details in kind of a hurry so we can stay on the heels of the paving contract that's already let. So next slide, please. So, I mean, my story to council when we showed this is like, this is really not going to be a big deal. Nobody's going to hardly notice from a delay standpoint. Like, it's not going to take people any longer to get through Main Street, maybe a couple of seconds, but nothing noticeable. Yeah, queuing was not shown to be a big issue. It's really Main Street doesn't need more than 2 lanes, so this is should be a really good improvement for downtown. And for the next slide, please. Travel time comparison. So we're showing 12 to 18 seconds, but that was actually with protected phasing at each intersection, and we have since decided to back off of that because we have coordinated fixed time signals downtown, and adding in that separate phase just for the bikes. Our fear was we'd have a lot of just dead time where nobody's moving, and we didn't want that to be a reason for people to not like the project and point to it as a downside. So and we'll see how it goes. We can always add that in later if it becomes an issue. Next slide, please. So yeah, we've completed 60% design. We've applied for a Safe Routes to School Rapid Response Grant, and we're feverishly working towards completing the design and getting this out later this summer, probably September timeframe. So hope you all can come back and see it. Yeah.
Nice.
Happy to answer any questions or anything about the process or the project.
You seems like you opted not to do a trial run of like temporary dividers or anything like that. Is that right? And if so, why?
Yeah, we haven't done that, and I think it's primarily time and staff resources. We just we're trying to. We had this deadline for paving, and we started the study as soon as we were aware of it, and we've been going through the approvals, and we've focused the staff time on getting the design complete, as opposed to we're a small shop and we're doing the design in-house, and just honestly don't have the time to add something else right now. Yeah.
Zal's out of town, but I see emails because I get CC'd on everything, and I'm pretty sure that project was approved, and Zal will let you know when she gets back, but.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I thought I saw an email about that, but Zal's still out of town, so in essence, ODOT approved the rapid response.
Okay. She said it would have been, she told me it had been sent to ODOT management.
Yep, and
which I assumed was a good sign.
yeah,
but-
great sign, and we got it emailed back with a thumbs up, and so
Oh, awesome.
it went to Zal's vacation responder, but we'll get back to you in about a week and a half.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great news. So
Are we visiting
Yeah,
there
you can ask
tomorrow?
a question.
Have you incorporated bike parking along that street at all to coincide with the new bike lanes?
that's a great question. We don't have that in the project. We have over the years, we've had like a little bit of funding just for bike parking downtown, and we've put in several staple racks along Main Street over the past several years, but that's a good question, something we can definitely look at as we're finalizing the design. If there's a little leftover parking space to do a bike route or something.
Bike rail, furniture zone, et cetera.
Yeah.
Have you been drawing on the blueprint for urban design or anything like that in the process? The local street?
It's a local street, yeah, so we have not really been using the BUD. We use a lot of the same principles in our street designs. We our standard lane width is 11 feet, but we've used a lot of 10-foot lanes around the city too. Where needed on Main Street, we're planning to use 2 11-foot lanes. And then the bike lane space will be 12 feet, and then there's a buffer between that and the parking. It's buffer gets as small as 2 feet between the parking and the bike lanes.
I'm curious, so I'm thinking about other separated bi-directional bike facilities, and I'm just curious about the kind of origin and destinations of people using this facility and how many turning movements they're going to be. And with not having a dedicated phase, how that's going to work out, like who yields to whom. And I appreciate not wanting to delay. So we have an example of that, like leaving the University of Oregon campus on 13th. There's a clear origin and destination of campus and downtown, so it makes sense to provide separated two-way bike facilities. But the signal timing has definitely been a frustration for the community because there's a lot of delays. But if you don't delay, is it a safety risk? Kind of the counterpoint. So I'm curious why you chose the bi-directional as opposed to individual bike lanes on either side that are a little bit more intuitive for the turning movements.
Yeah, I don't think we actually don't recall actually having one on either side as an option. in the 50 options that we. But that is one of the things we're still looking at, because like the reason we applied for Safe Routes to School, we have 2 middle schools that can use from the Bear Creek Greenway, can use Main Street to get to some lower traffic streets that then connect to the middle schools, and one's a left turn, one's a right turn. So I think we need to look at that's kind of one of the last things we're looking at, is the intersections. How do we accommodate those turn movements to and from that facility? Mainly from, I think 2 would you'd be on a street in a lane, so you're going with the traffic to get to it, but from it, we probably need some, the left turn, or sorry, the contraflow right turn is fairly easy, and then go through left turn, since it's on the left side, is fairly intuitive too. But I think the right turn across the 2 lanes of traffic is where we probably need a bike box or something for people to wait and have them go with the signal. So we're also looking at how can we create for pedestrians to a protected feeling where the shadow of the parking is as they're crossing, so it's not such a wide crossing for pedestrians, especially at the stop controlled intersections that aren't signalized. Yeah.
Given that it's a one-way car street, right? Yeah, you're getting to the detailed fun stuff, like how do you make it all work and improve safety?
Yeah, and
Exciting.
I guess that's another thing of having the contraflow with the protected signal phasing, is we actually have quite a few stop controlled intersections on Main Street, so you wouldn't have that protection all the way down the corridor. It would be dependent on the location.
Well, I think it is fabulous. We're so excited to see these things going in. We got 1 more minute, so.
Okay.
As the bicycle advisory committee here, what are the things that like ODOT in this area that they've done to help you, and what you wish maybe there was? Like if you had a fantasy one.
For this one, this is really a city street. Highway 238's moved, so I think we really haven't talked to ODOT much about it. For Riverside Central, we've coordinated with ODOT because we tie into their facilities at the north end, primarily. And our local region staff has really been great to work with. There's actually a multi-use path along 62 going in that Jenna Marmon helped get into that project before she left ODOT. So I think, one thing that I wished along the way was that we could maybe look at Great Streets program for the Highway 99 stuff. But because we have jurisdiction over our section of 99, we're not eligible for Great Streets at this point. Yeah, because we're really trying to fit all of these within existing curbs as with pavement maintenance, and not really, widening the sidewalks, doing that sort of thing. It's been probably cost prohibitive for the city to just take on realistically. So there has been a lot of interest and people asking along the way if we could enhance the pedestrian environment more, and not just focus on bikes. So I think that's,
The whole package.
yeah, it'd be nice to be able to deliver it as a package. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're gonna round up our meeting.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yay, rapid response. Okay, we're down to our member round table. So I have 2 or 3 things. Do we want to just go around the table and you can let us know what's going on? So. Aaron.
Quick update on recruitment. I know we kind of skipped
Yeah,
over
we
that.
skipped over it.
But the recruitment committee met to meet Dell and Lauren. There was a lot of applications. It's really difficult to try to narrow it down. I think as a committee, like as a working group, we really want to expand like our expertise in like the e-bike realm as well. As making sure that like we're making sure the committee is diverse, representing all voices of Oregon. So we recommended 2 different candidates to the governor's office. So it's taking a while to get them approved. Hopefully they get approved, but our 2 recommendations were Nolan, which is a current student at the University of Oregon. I know it's killer for me to recommend his doc, but they were the best candidate. And I think I liked how they, you know, they want to stay in Oregon long term. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for in under 21 representatives, you know, looking forward into the future.
Did you say their name?
Nolan.
Oh.
And then the other candidate was Michael Bork, and he's currently the North Clackamas Parks and Rec Director, but he's a disabled veteran. He does a lot of e-biking. So he has a lot of experience as well with like organizational leadership. So really excited to have him on the team. So hopefully they get through the governor's appointment process and have him join the committee soon.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's a big list also.
Yeah.
That we had that many people interested.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, huge shout out to the recruitment and the outreach teams. I think I was in more meetings with some of you over the last month or 2 than with fellow ODOT employees.
Oh my. Del, do you have anything?
Well, I was involved in the same thing and it was incredible with how many qualified candidates we had that were looking to help, and it was a very difficult process to whittle them down. And
We need to figure out how to have a secondary committee so we can just.
And I thought about the MAC, but I wouldn't want that to do it first assignment.
Jessica, any updates on our conversations around Dave Thompson?
I was kind of holding off on that till we got more clarity from, so we have 2 levels of new process with this recruitment, both new governor and new assistant director. So kind of going through those steps and wanted to get clarity on those before I followed up with Dave. But what the recruitment group had talked about a little bit was we have not had a Central Oregon representative on the committee since Jeff termed out. And so we did a push specifically for Central Oregon applicants this time around. And like Del and Aaron said, we just had, I think we had 43 applicants for our 2 openings, which is kind of unheard of, and a really strong, diverse crew. So to meet our statutory requirements for representation, both in the statute that created OBPAC and in House Bill 2985 around reflecting ability and demographic makeup of the state, and just like the unique perspectives people brought, there was Nolan and Michael that were the selections from the committee, but we had Dave Thompson, who is currently the chair of the Deschutes Bike Ped Advisory Committee, who is also a really strong candidate from Bend. So we talked about possibly offering him a non-voting, non-appointed like resource seat on the committee, which is something we have not done before because of concerns about, you know, tokenizing certain voices, but when it's for a geographic representation, that was something we felt was a little bit different. So that's something the recruitment group talked about. And once we get those two governor appointed positions through the process, like to have a broader conversation about.
That's it for me.
Thank you. Emma,
Highway design manual update is happening, so going from the blueprint for urban design, big heavy lift, to integrating it into some chapters. ODOT's now doing smaller bites on an annual cycle, so more frequent review. The draft is going to be available for review May 30th to June 16th, so it's like a 2-week, pretty quick turnaround. And I'm wondering who is willing to review that, because I think it's important. That's one of those documents that is a bit dry to read, but it also really informs what gets built out on our streets and is impactful. So I'm curious if there's any interest or willing parties, including, I'm looking to Lauren on the screen too. Not to call you out, but I just want to make sure you know you're included in this call around the table. I see you.
Now you see me. I see.
I've seen you all along. I just want to make sure you feel included.
I do. I've got a lot of other summer reading to do though.
Yay, Erin's still chipping
Yeah.
in.
I spend a lot of time looking at the highway design manual for my capstone project.
Good.
so I'm used to the dry language.
Oh, great. You.
I might try to look at it, but
You'll just put it in Google Docs for us, or will somebody
staff,
send it to
yeah,
all of us to?
Yeah, just
I
send
was
it.
forwarded an email by someone else, and I was like, oh, this is a thing.
Yeah, if you could just send it to us once it's become available.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I might be.
Yeah, that's
Don't count on it.
so timeline on that one, do we need to do something before the next meeting?
Yeah, May 30th to June 16th is the window, so input by June 16th, or that ship has sailed.
So are we doing this as individuals?
Yeah, I think just the individuals can provide comments to staff, but taking a kind of like head perspective.
How physically do you want to do it? Like put it on Google Docs and some of us add comments? Not edits, but suggestions?
I would say we'll get whatever email says, here's the process for providing input. You read that email, and if you choose to provide input, you
Okay.
follow the process. That's.
Well, I'm just thinking, so we're a one voice that maybe we could send if we have anything to send to Erin.
I love that, and I don't know that this timeline is gonna be
Yeah.
feasible for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, let's just comment as individuals.
Okay.
And it's pretty wonky technical, so it's like, well, what do you think of this typo?
Oh.
Should be changed to this?
Yeah,
or
not
let's
to
just
that
like play with it.
extent.
Like, do we really want to do that right now?
No, I wasn't talking about wordsmithing. I was just talking about broad stuff, which I might still just send you an email.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna let you hear.
Okay, anything else you got?
Food for thought, I was listening to a parking related podcast on my drive down, and I recently found out that while the climate friendly and equitable communities is repealing a lot of mandated parking across the state of Oregon and metro areas, there's some challenges with lenders being able to fund like mixed use projects that develop more units and are biking and walking oriented. So I think that's just an evolution that's gonna have to somehow be processed across the state with some growing pains, so that our financial institutions are going to allow more human-centered design. So good for that.
Am I up? Okay, nothing too significant, but I did want to share with you all that I have moved on from the street trust, and I actually work at Metro now as a transportation planner there. So it's all part of the same body of work. I'm still committed to all the things I've always been committed to, just a different hat.
And you're still going to be with us?
I'm gonna stay on OBPAC. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
I have nothing to add, really. I enjoyed Oaks, this my first Oaks, and seeing some of you there was great. And I will go again.
Yay.
I have two things. The Oregon Transportation Plan, week 3, well, week 2, and kind of got together and looked at it because I've been on the committee and I just wanted a second set of eyes. So they looked at it as well. We sent a thing that said, look at these things a little closer, a couple of them. at the end of the week, I do have yet another meeting where they're taking all that information that people responded. And they're going to tell us what they're going to do with it, which is fantastic. And then I also have the ACT Modal Advisory Committee coming up. So that's where the OTC comes to report and they say, we need this out of everybody, and everybody says, well, we need this out of you. So as your guys' representative, last time I just said, hey, everybody's dying, can you do a little better? And I'm looking at my notes, sorry. Oh, I have more than that. Okay, so the ODOT manual review, she talked about the local grant, government grant, at the end of this. At the end of June, I will be going through the local grant government program for parks and things like that. Last time I did that, it was a lot of focused around, okay, so you're building this beautiful facility, this beautiful park, how are people going to get to it? And that was kind of an eye-opening, like, oh, you mean you have to drive to get to this park? That makes it not accessible for like half of the community. So that was an interesting conversation. So at the end of June, I will be once again sitting on that panel and we'll be choosing to give out money again. So get with me if you guys have anything where you're like, maybe pay attention to this time. Because last time it was really just like, so how are people getting them? And then the OTP, we just talked about that. And then the Modal Advisory Committee at the end of June. Last time I was in front of them, we just talked about the surge of deaths in bike and pedestrian world. And of course, there's not enough money to sustain the system that they have. That's what they came back with is, we need more money. And we went, yeah, you do. And by the way, we need all these things because everybody's having a lot of issues. So anything other than kind of filling in the network, anything specific that you guys have, but because those are pretty good visual places for us to put information. Emma, you're gonna say something, what?
Yeah, so I was inspired and optimistic about the Great Streets update today. And I actually made a note when we're talking about STIP and future funding and what to convey to OGC and legislature and all the people who can control the purse strings. Maybe we say, hey, what we've seen so far, it looks like Great Streets program is heading in a really transformational, amazing direction that could help solve some of the problems I spoke about last time. However, it's significantly underfunded. So how are we going to fund it more? That's a thought, one strategy, but it's on my mind. So I said,
Good. No, that's great. Anything else when I go in front of the OTC talk for you guys? Okay. Moving on then. Request you. I will make it happen. Okay. So next on the list is action items, recap, site logistics, next meeting, agenda build. This is for Jessica normally takes over.
Yep.
I could try if you want some support.
Well, I can go over logistics for tomorrow real quickly. So clearly I'm not going to be leading your site visit tomorrow as planned, but John Leisure, our Region 3 ATL, is staying at the hotel with y'all and will be meeting you at the lobby at 8:30 to get everybody organized and go over your general route and logistics for the day, with the goal of getting everybody on their bikes at 9. Jenna Berman, our Region 2 ATL, is bringing up a bike for you, Beth. Does anybody else need a bike for tomorrow to participate in site visits? Okie doke. Let me share my screen real quick just to give you a real high overview of where you're going to be going. So you right now are at, let's see, you're somewhere right around here. You're across the street from the Cracker Barrel roughly. So you are going to be getting on your bikes and rolling through this lovely single point urban interchange, where you will see lots of very, very big signs and a kind of interesting skinny bike lane. So this is going to be a interesting but a little higher stress section that you are going to start your ride off on tomorrow. But John can stop and talk you through some of the what the heck is going on here with this weird looking interchange and why did we build it this way, before you hop on this little green line here, which is the Bear Creek Greenway that you will be following just on your nice own little comfortable shared use path through down to the south through the park, along Bear Creek, just to the west of I-5, down through Phoenix, where you will be getting off. Oh, I went too far, shot too far. Down through Phoenix, where you'll be getting off at this little spur onto North Phoenix Road. And probably I would say John is going to have you just walk your bikes rather than go through this channelized right turn to around the corner here where you'll be meeting up with some Region 3 staff who are working on the next phase, who have recently completed improvements in this area at the Coleman Creek Bridge on Highway 99 in Phoenix, and are planning the next phase of improvements to the highway that will go north from Coleman Creek, which, as you can see from the aerial, is an area that used to be pretty dense housing and businesses that was completely wiped out by the 2020 wildfires and is in the process of kind of slowly redeveloping. So they'll be talking about the wildfire response and that project going forward. They'll have some handouts for all of you with information about that project, since we didn't have time to incorporate a PowerPoint kind of presentation in today. And then when you wrap up with those folks, be returning back up the Bear Creek Greenway the way you came, to have any sort of wrap up before our goal is to get you all back able to get on the road home by noon tomorrow. So if folks want to stick around and grab lunch in Medford before they do that, the active transportation liaisons, quite a few of them will be joining you on the site visit tomorrow, so you'll get a chance to get to know those folks who are on the front lines of this work in the regions. And yeah, if you want to grab lunch with them before you hit the road, that's an option, but kind of up to whatever folks need for their travel and getting home when they need to. So that's a general game plan for tomorrow.
And Jessica, was there a plan for 6 p.m. the optional dinner tonight?
Yeah, so for the optional dinner that is on the agenda for tonight, that is I was gonna call and just get a table for they don't do reservations, but they will set up a space if they know a big group is coming. So I'm just gonna give them a call and let them know 10 to 15 folks might be joining them around 6. The active transportation liaisons are wrapping up their meeting today, so they are all planning on coming down there tonight, so that's another opportunity to meet those folks and get to know them. Yeah, so that's all we've got for tonight. Any questions on any of that?
I think it's walking distance from here, so that's.
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes away.
Where is it?
It is. Let me pull that up. Yeah.
Right here.
Oh, I didn't look at that. Okay. Thanks.
Oh, you got it?
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go over what we promised to do. What did we promise to do?
Try. You want me to do a run through? I'll try and you all can listen for what I missed.
Okay,
Yeah.
what did we
But-
promise to do?
Okay, so we approved Oregon Community Pass funding, so yay.
Ooh.
Acknowledge and celebrate that. Yay, thank you. And the applications that include the TDI scores that were requested last meeting are being posted or maybe already are on the website. I don't know, they're in process. So yay. The outreach subcommittee decided that they'd work with the new developmental staff person on the strategies recommendation to bring forward to a future meeting. You have worked super hard, so Lauren and Dell with Roberto's help are gonna schedule a meeting with that new person, and hopefully the result of that is about 5-ish items to bring forward to our full committee to say, this is what we're gonna move forward with and communicate back to people who have participated in the process.
Just wanted to say end of June might be wishful thinking for that timeline of that rotation person being
Later.
Yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there, maybe hold that loosely. As
It was a
we,
July agenda question mark.
yeah, perfect. That sounds perfect. Thank you.
Hopeful.
Yeah.
Mavis is going to attend the Pendleton OTC meeting on July 13th and speak to the STIP upcoming funding around ped safety, active transportation funding, and equitable outcomes. We're gonna meet, Andre and me, about the draft letter for the July meeting and figuring out what we're gonna comment on for the upcoming STIP process. I had a little note about maybe increasing Great Streets funding based on what we heard today, and I like transformational human-oriented design funding programs that overcome silos. That's in line with some previous comments we've made. We will get future updates on the ASAP and the vulnerable road user safety assessment items that Jessica is gonna work on. We are recommending not reappointing to the MAC at this time and instead focusing on the safety and mobility stakeholder engagement initiative to try to produce changes through that process and working to send a letter to Karen and work with her on how do you advise us moving forward. I recently heard that stakeholder is a racist term, kind of referring to stakes in the ground and like plotting out land and slavery. So maybe they'll change the name of the initiative. We'll see. So by end of June, we'll move that forward. Highway design manual update. Erin's gonna review it and staff's gonna send out information on that. That's the end of my action items. Anything- What did I miss?
Related to the stakeholder thing, ODOT did just make the agency decision. We are not using that term anymore. And our Office of Social Equity has provided a list of other terms that we can use in place of that.
So we'll be advising and figuring out what the new name of the thing is.
Okay, and agenda bill.
All right, so on your agenda builder for July, pretty much name of the game is safety and STIP plus your co-chair election. So we will have the annual co-chair election, a Great Streets update from Robin, and really focusing on some of those transportation safety office updates that we were going to try to fit in this month, as well as the vulnerable road user assessment and ASAP program. Is there anything else that folks want to request to add to that agenda, or things they would like to request to bump back besides or things in that committee business that are not part of our regular cycle that we should make sure to include.
I just want to emphasize Mavis's earlier point of if you're not currently a co-chair, highly consider it because I think we're gonna have potentially full turnover. So start thinking about if you're willing to serve as the leadership for this committee, since we should have leadership come July.
Oh.
Is
it kosher to ask like who is interested?
Well, that's what we're kind of hoping is that by that July meeting, whoever's interested might.
And I think you two should be interested.
He thought that a year ago.
Great idea. Okay.
I'm gonna term out here soon.
So
though,
you guys are, or you
I
just won't
think I
wait.
should probably. Get someone else to.
We're,
Okay.
we'll pass that bridge in July.
Okay.
Saying, give it some serious thought.
If you are at all interested,
And what about new members? Do we have to wait for the governor to?
we do. We have to wait for the governor to
And
make it good.
is that likely to happen before the next meeting?
Who knows? It's a new governor.
Sounds like.
I'm very hopeful we will have the two new folks through the process by the July meeting. But I think it's unlikely that either of them will be interested in jumping right into the chair position.
Is it in the bylaws that it has to be co-chairs?
We
No.
changed the bylaws to co-chairs last. Whatever.
Oh, we changed them.
And I recently heard of a thing called incoming chair, which I am fascinated by and love. It's like instead of chair and vice chair, it's chair and incoming chair. And so the intention is that the chair steps away and the incoming chair becomes the chair, and then you get a new incoming chair, and it's a way to like be easier to volunteer for it, especially when you don't know very much, because it feels like a position that is a learning position with the intention that it moves into the chair. Just throwing it, I just found out about this, and I was like, game changer. Chair and incoming chair, so I wanted to share that.
Okay, we are officially over time. Do we have anybody else that has anything pertinent to bring to the table? Yeah, well, Jessica, your cake was really good.
What kind was it? What flavor?
It was chocolate and vanilla.
It's like marbled.
And I told Jennifer that your favorite color was glitter, because that time that you said that, and she put like sparkly sprinkles on top. And
it was real frosty.
It was real frosty.
I'm hoping some of it comes home to you via some driving car, but you're.
Yeah, we'll see if we can bring some home to you.
She's sending you a picture of it.
Yeah, Alan sent me one earlier.
But this one shows the inside.
I miss solid food.
Again.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for enjoying it, and y'all have fun without me.
All right, I officially adjourn this meeting.
We started talking about glitter and